is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock, the Deputy Prime Minister, David Lammy, told LBC he's sorry to see a key cabinet minister quit.
I'm very sad to see John resign. He's a great friend and colleague, and I think was an exceptional Defence Secretary.
John Healey says the money promised for the long-awaited defence investment plan isn't enough, given the threats Britain's facing. He branded the Prime Minister unable and the Treasury unwilling to commit the resources needed. In the last hour, Sir Keir Starmer's replied via his own letter, which our political editor Natasha Clark's been reading.
He says, "Dear John, I'm determined to rebuild our country after years of being buffeted by crises. I'm sorry you will not be a part of this work." He talks about we've achieved a great deal working together. He's quite kind about John. But essentially what this letter is saying is that we are going to continue with the defence investment plan that I have already put on the table. He says it delivers an unprecedented increase in defence spending.
Co-author of the Spending Defence Review, Richard Barrons, has told LBC John Healey's replacement will have a difficult task.
The new Defence Secretary appointed tomorrow, it seems to me, more likely than not, will be invited to take on the job on the basis of the £13.5 billion on the table and make it work. And yet, we know the Ministry of Defence has spent since last September explaining it cannot do that without making cuts which the government has itself rejected.
Labour MP for Plymouth, Fred Thomas, has told Andrew Marr the government needs to take national security more seriously.
Obviously, any sane person would like to spend £0 on defence and spend it all on public services and giving people in the UK the opportunity. However, that is not what we're looking at.
Not an option, is it?
Tory leader Kemi Badenoch says Sir Keir Starmer's premiership is falling apart. Donald Trump has cancelled tonight's threatened airstrikes on Iran. He says talks towards a treaty are progressing well. He also posted before about capturing Karg Island. It's unclear if that is off. Kenneth Katzman, for decades the US Congress expert on Iran, told Andrew Marr the president knows the US public will not tolerate heavy American casualties.
It would involve troops on the ground. Whether it's going to run into casualties or not, I don't know. I understand Iran has put some mines or started mining Karg Island, put some defenses on it. I mean, that's not going to stop a U.S. capture of Karg Island, but yes, there could be casualties.
Counter-terror police are now leading an investigation into a stabbing at a high school in Manchester on Tuesday. A 14-year-old girl who'd been arrested and detained under the Mental Health Act has now been released to police custody. A 19-year-old police officer has died after being hit by a car while on duty. PC Jess Turnbull had been responding to a car crash at Cramlington in Northumberland. Northumbria Chief Constable Vanessa Jardine has paid tribute.
She had so much still to look forward to in her career and her life. She was a dedicated and committed officer who always sought to do her best to keep her communities safe.
The police say they're out in significant numbers again in Belfast after a second night of racism-fuelled violence. It followed the stabbing of Stephen Ogilvie, who's said to be improving in hospital. Zach Polanski's criticised Nigel Farage for suggesting pride isn't needed because LGBTQ plus people got everything they campaigned for. A number of reform-led councils have said they won't fly the pride flag this month. The leader of the Greens in England and Wales has told LBC as hate crime is on the rise, pride remains necessary.
So when we see Nigel Farage and Reform trying to stop people celebrating or normalising their identity, it does have real-world consequences.
And the World Cup kicks off tonight with co-hosts Mexico taking on South Africa. Scotland get their campaign underway against Haiti on Sunday. England play Croatia on Wednesday. In the city, the FTSE 100's closed up 49 points at 10,303. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.16. LBC weather, the rain becoming more showery into the evening, drier later in the night, staying windy for many, lows of 9 to 15 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Matt Hewitt.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Four minutes past 7 on LBC. It's Iain Dale here with you in 10. A very good evening to you. It's not a very good evening for the Prime Minister, is it? There I was, waiting to sit down to lunch, and I see a text. John Healey has resigned. It doesn't get much worse for a Prime Minister when a Defence Secretary resigns and accuses you basically of not standing up for the security of the nation, because that is the first duty of any government, to defend the realm, as the saying goes. If you can't defend the country, you might not have a country worth defending. Now, Keir Starmer, over the last couple of years, has actually talked quite a good game on defence and made clear that he thinks that we should be spending more on defence. Well, John Healey, in his resignation letter, has blown the gaff on that, hasn't he? I mean, it is, well, quite to the point. He goes, you have been unable, and the Treasury has been unwilling, to commit the resources that the nation needs to defend the country at this time of rising threats. I'm not going to read you the whole thing, but I'm just selected issues. You spelled out the threats last week. It is our intelligence assessment and the assessment of other countries in NATO that there could be an attack by Russia on NATO as soon as 2030. After explaining to you that I would not be able to accept the DIP settlement that does not give our forces the resources they need, I'm now left with no other option than to submit my resignation as your Defence Secretary. Well, good on him. That's what I say. A politician who's willing to stand up for what he believes in. And he's a Defence Secretary. He knows what is needed to defend the country, and yet the Treasury will not give him the money to do it. The Prime Minister, his official title is actually First Lord of the Treasury. Well, I'm not sure he's even the second Lord of the Treasury now, because Rachel Reeves has refused to come up with the money. Now, there are all sorts of ways she could have done this. We heard from the Liberal Democrats last night. They've got a plan for defence bonds, which would raise 20 billion. She could put up taxes. There are all sorts of ways of coming up with this money. She could cut expenditure, particularly on welfare, but not just welfare. But she's not willing to do it. So Rachel Reeves is running this government now, not Keir Starmer. Does this mean the end for Keir Starmer? What does it say about this government's commitment to defend our shores? 0345 6060 973. Rant over. But I do feel really, really strongly about this, and I really want to praise John Healey for taking a principled decision. Aggie Chambray is here, LBC's Deputy Political Editor. What a day.
What a day indeed. So just after midday that we got the news that John Healey, the Defence Secretary, had resigned. It is just after 7 p.m. now, Ian. There is no replacement yet
which tells its own story,
as Defence Secretary. I think it does, Ian. I think it truly does. And it's just, as you read out, an astonishing letter from the Defence Secretary after there had been weeks, months of wrangling over the Defence Investment Plan, which was supposed to be published in autumn last year. That has been delayed and delayed and delayed. And sources suggesting to us today the government had wanted to publish that on Thursday, today, but with an uplift of £13.5 billion and only £10 billion of that being new money. Suggestions from army chiefs is that we need sort of almost close to £30 billion instead. So John Healey resigning today just after midday. We have just in the last half an hour or so got a letter back to John Healey, the Defence Secretary, from the Prime Minister. He has agreed that the government has to go further on increased defence funding, but he said the Defence Investment Plan does just that, delivering an unprecedented increase in defence spending in a sustainable way. It will provide the resources our military needs to keep us safe, and the clarity the British defence industry needs to plan. And he talked about ensuring the money spent is spent wisely and used to back jobs and growth here in Britain. He finished his letter by saying, taking these decisions is never easy. I'm determined to rebuild our country after years of being buffeted by crises. I am sorry that you will not be part of that work going
a very
forward.
Cold letter from Keir Starmer. There's nothing about, I hope to see you back in government, or you've been brilliant, or just straight to the point. And it doesn't read well, actually, I don't think.
It sort of seems like undisguised quiet fury in that letter, doesn't it? And if you compare that to the last cabinet minister who resigned from Sir Keir Starmer's cabinet, that was Wes Streeting, the health secretary. And I remember being struck at the time by the warmth, actually, in the response from Keir Starmer to Wes Streeting. And you do not see that parallel today. But Ian, I spent the day with the Deputy Prime Minister, the Justice Secretary, David Lammy, and I asked him after the news came out for his reaction to John Healey's departure from the government.
I'm very sad to see John resign. He's a great, great friend and colleague, and I think was an exceptional Defence Secretary, under John and the Prime Minister, our commitment to Ukraine has been sacrosanct. Defence spending is now higher than every single year of the Conservatives previously in power. 270 billion we will be spending by the end of the next Parliament, and there are contracts in Barrow, on the Clyde, 1,400s through the door that John Healey and the Prime Minister have delivered. We will be coming forward with a defence investment plan before the NATO conference, but of course I want to pay tribute to John Healey for all that he has done. I'm saddened that he's felt that he's had to resign, but I'm very proud of what this government has done, both in terms of defence and foreign policy, and I speak previously, obviously as Foreign Secretary, working very closely with John Healey and the Prime Minister.
It's not good enough, though, is it, to not have a date on 3% on defence spending, and those words from him, and from someone like John Healey, who I know you've worked with for a long time, you know, he's incredibly loyal. For him to say this, I mean, can the government survive this?
Well, for every government, national security is the number one priority. We will be coming forward with our defence investment plan before the NATO conference, and we will meet the commitments that the Prime Minister set out in his Munich Security Conference. I'm very confident of that.
Can the Prime Minister survive this?
I'm very confident of that.
It did strike me slightly in that he didn't say yes. He did say, you know, that he was very confident of that. And I asked him specifically later in that interview whether the Prime Minister would still be Prime Minister in a month's time, to which he said yes, he would be. But I just thought his language there was interesting.
Well, he knows that if Keir Starmer isn't Prime Minister, he won't be Deputy Prime Minister. Simple as that.
That may be true. But meanwhile, Iain, John Healey has also found himself being praised by opposition leaders. First, this is Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch.
John Healey has done the honourable thing. Yesterday, I raised the issue of the Defence Investment Plan, and the Prime Minister exposed the fact that he was not going to put money into defence to the amount that was required. And I'm sure John Healey sat there listening to the Prime Minister tell me that he was increasing defence funding when he is not. He has done the honourable thing and resigned. I am glad that he agrees with me that we need to put more money into defence. But what is shocking is what he's written in his letter, where he says that the Prime Minister is making the country less safe and putting our troops at risk at a time of increasing threats.
And this afternoon, Iain, our LBC colleague Nick Ferrari spoke exclusively to Reform UK leader Nigel Farage about the statement which John Healey released this afternoon.
What his message says is that the Prime Minister is not prioritising the defence of the realm.
Well, where does this leave Sir Keir Starmer? Where does it leave the Labour government, Mr Farage?
Keir Starmer's premiership is over. It's only a matter of time. Already in the corridors of Westminster, the jockeying for position is going on. Whether Burnham wins next week or not, there will be a challenge over the course of this summer to Starmer's leadership. It's over.
And you can hear more of that exclusive interview with Nigel Farage on Nick Ferrari at breakfast tomorrow morning from 7 here on LBC.
Now, Aggie, this is a happy, sad day, isn't it? Because I'm off on holiday for 2 weeks.
Which is the happy bit.
No, the happy bit is that you are about to have a baby.
At some stage, yes.
Therefore, you'll be going on maternity leave. So you will have done that by the time I get back. So yes. Goodness knows when I'm going to see you in that chair again.
I'm sure I'll be back before long, Iain.
Should be back the day after the baby's born, I think.
I think contractually I'm not allowed to do that, but yes.
Well, the very, very best wishes, and I hope it all goes very smoothly, and I know how much you're looking forward to it.
Thank you, Iain.
Right. After that, let's go to James Heappey. He's former Conservative Armed Forces Minister and previously an officer in the British Army. James, very good evening. What's your reaction to John Healey's resignation? I mean, I was completely shocked by it. It's one of those things that you didn't really see coming.
Yes. I mean, I wouldn't have woken up this morning and thought John Healey's going to resign today. But on the other hand, two things would make it not surprising to me. Firstly, that I know John to be a deeply honourable man. When he shadowed us pretty much throughout the last Parliament, he was vigorous in the way that he held us to account, but he was also fair in the way that he sought to work with us and challenged us when he thought we were wrong. So it doesn't surprise me he's acted honourably. And secondly, his position was effectively untenable. The chiefs had said that they needed 28 billion to stand still. The cabinet secretary and the national security advisor had written to the prime minister to say the absolute floor in the increase in defence spending is 18 billion, beyond which the cuts are far too painful to endure given the geopolitical circumstance. And John was being asked to swallow 13.5. So an honourable man put in an impossible position really had only one choice.
Some people are saying, and I've had a couple of texts already in the programme about this, saying that, well, look, it's all very well blaming Keir Starmer, blaming Rachel Reeves, blaming John Healey, but the fact is, it's the last Conservative government that's to blame. You were a minister in that government. You didn't fund defence properly, and this government is having to clear up your mess.
Well, I mean, look, I think I sort of offered a couple of answers there. Firstly, the government specifically within which I served, so from sort of 2019 onwards, did start to increase defence spending, and that increase was on a good trajectory, and I'm proud of that. But it would be invidious to come on and make a party political point, not least because I'm not actively in party politics anymore. The reality is that since the end of the Cold War, there was a peace dividend cashed in. There was then an increase in spending around the time that I was in the army to support operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. But those were for capabilities very specific to those operational demands. They were not part of what you would regard as that kind of state-on-state war-fighting capability. And over 30 years, that atrophied. Now, you could make the argument, and I would have no truck with anybody who did, that until 2014, when Putin went into Crimea, those were probably sound decisions based on the geopolitics of the day. But from 2014 onwards, and this is where Conservative governments really should look themselves in the mirror, if the increase in defence spending that began in 2020 should have started after Putin went into Crimea. Those 6 years, sadly, were lost. But there is one person in number 10 right now who has the power to put all of that right, and he's chosen not to do so.
And presumably because Rachel Reeves threatened to resign if he overruled her. I mean, I'm making that as a supposition. I don't know that for a fact, but that's the only reason I can think that he basically bowed to what she wanted.
Whatever the dynamic. I mean, I do think there's something quite sinister where I think the Treasury is just institutionally averse to increases in defence spending. The 18 billion...
Well, they always have been.
Well, but the 18 billion Ben Wallace secured in 2020, it required Boris to basically just insist that it was going to happen. The Treasury are not wrong to be deeply suspicious of the MOD's ability to waste taxpayers' money on poor procurement. I mean, the track record speaks for itself. But unfortunately, the geopolitical circumstances of the day require the money, and the Treasury trying to teach the MOD a lesson and making the uplift in funding conditional on better procurement behaviour feels odd given the threat that Putin poses and the fact that the entire of the rest of NATO is busily spending more money and retooling up in order to restore their conventional deterrence, whilst we're still not.
James, thank you very much indeed. That's James Heaby, former Conservative Armed Forces Minister. 0345 6060 973. Your opportunity to react to John Healey's resignation. What does it say about the future for the Prime Minister? What does it say that we're now at 18 minutes past 7? So 7 or 8 hours after the resignation, and the post of Defence Secretary still hasn't been filled. And up until a few moments ago, we thought that the Americans were going to be launching big attacks on Iran this evening, and Donald Trump seems to have changed his mind on that. But what does it say that they can't find anyone to take the job after 8 hours? I know why they can't find anyone, because who would want the job in these circumstances? I don't know who's going to succeed John Healey. It should probably be Al Carnes, his junior minister. We might have some news on him in just a moment. It's 19 minutes past 7.
This is LBC.
At Lidl, say yes to a summer of indulgence and pick up juicy
First of all, deep concern about what this has revealed about the scale of ambition in the DIP, the Defence Investment Plan, but also the ambition in terms of its levels of reform and transformation. We just heard Al Khan, you mentioned, publicly criticise that, in fact, which suggests to me he's on a mission to get sacked. But also, I think there'll be a sense of real concern that this has lasted a year. It's gone on and on and on. Many small companies basically have said, we can't deal with this. We're going to move to Germany or move to America. We just can't survive the cash flow problems this is resulting in. And now, with this resignation, is the Prime Minister going to press ahead and find someone who can announce this defence plan next week, which would be under-resourced, but at least it would be a plan, and you'd have some certainty. Positive, negative. Or does this mean he decides, I'm going to put this back into the mix, back into the ringer, we open it up again, go back to Rachel Reeves, ask for more money, in which case we could be looking at more months of chaos. And I think that would be seen by many in defence, particularly in industry, as the greater evil at this point.
I mean, the Prime Minister, I said earlier, has talked the talk on the need to increase defence spending. And I still believe that probably in his heart, that's what he wants to do. And it is the Treasury that, as usual, is at the root of all evil. I mean, they tried to stop, I think it was when Gavin Williamson was Defence Secretary, they put the block on any more money for defence. And in the end, it was forthcoming, but it really had to be wrung out of them.
That's right, but I think what the government will know also is that the Chancellor and the Prime Minister may disagree about many things, but what they agree on is that an uplift in defence spending has to be funded, not through more borrowing and not through rises in tax, and therefore it can only be funded through specific, targeted, identifiable cuts in certain areas, and we already know lots of those are ring-fenced. So I understand why this is such an incredibly devilish problem for the Chancellor and the Prime Minister. But I think the problem is you set that against the fact that we're looking at an uplift of, from effectively 2.5% to 2.68% between now and the end of the decade, leaving pretty much all of that massive rise to meet the NATO target of 3.5% of GDP on defence by 2035 over the next Parliament. And if stuff is being stuck to the next Parliament, as you know, Iain, it may as well not really exist in terms of funding security and assurance, because, that's another Parliament, that's another OBR window, that's another that's another era, and that doesn't really count. And so, whilst I understand the difficulty he faces in that, I think the NATO summit's going to be the real embarrassment for him when he turns up there next month with this spending trajectory, which looks so grim.
And just finally, what's happening in other European countries, other NATO countries, and their defence spending? Because I suspect that we're not alone in having these arguments. I think similar arguments are taking place in France, but Germany is really grasping the nettle on this.
It's grasping the nettle, spending huge sums of money. It's the biggest defence spender in Europe already. It'll be spending double what we spend by the end of the decade on conventional military forces if you put nuclear aside. So that's remarkable. But of course, I acknowledge Germany has changed its constitutional debt brake to allow it to borrow and rack up more debt. And it has the fiscal headroom to do that. And we don't. So they're in that advantageous position. If you look at the Baltics and others and some of the Nordic countries, they and the Poles, the way they've done it is to say, all right, we'll just spend 5%, nearly 5% of GDP on defence. That is an incredible choice, but they've got the political support to make the necessary painful choices because they live next to Russia. We don't, and I accept that Keir Starmer just doesn't have the same politics, and it's a much harder sell to say, I'm going to take 3.5% of our national output and put it on defence. So circumstances will vary.
Good luck in Washington, and thank you for joining us. And thank you for joining us. Really, I remember the first time I ever interviewed you, I think you were at Urusi, and it was back in the Arab Spring. Doesn't that seem a long time ago?
Different era completely. It's really good to talk to you again, Iain. Keep in touch.
Thank you very much indeed. That's Shashank Joshi, outgoing defence editor of The Economist magazine. Now, this is interesting. In the last few minutes, one of the people who could replace John Healey as Defence Secretary, the Armed Forces Minister, Al Khan, has been asked during a TV interview if he's considering quitting too.
Within the situation, I need to do what is right by the armed forces. And if I don't think that's right, then I will absolutely consider my position. And from my perspective at the moment, we have not closed with this deal. When we have closed with this deal, I will decide my position.
Well, make of that what you will. Of course, he is being also speculated about as running against Keir Starmer if there is a leadership election. So keep your eye on Al Khan's. It's 7:26 on LBC. David is in Bayswater. Hello, David.
Hi, Ian. So just a slightly contrarian voice. Hope you don't mind.
Of course not. I welcome it.
So basically, I don't really rate Healy because I heard him on Ferrari's show a few weeks ago, and he was absolutely hopeless. I don't know. It's a bit of a storm in a teacup over him resigning. I don't think he was that effective, personally. I think he was not convinced.
Well, on the basis of one pretty bad interview.
But, I mean, when you present on national radio, one should be prepared, especially if you're a minister. Anyway, that wasn't the main point. I have a few more points. So. Firstly, I think also this whole fury started a few months ago also with Trump when he said we needed to spend more. And I feel like we've been carried on that wave. Trump has told us we have to do this, so we're doing it. We haven't taken a measured view and thought, do we really need to spend that much? We need to think more strategically, not just throw money at the problem. Because look at Ukraine. They've defeated Russia on land or have held them back through the use of cheap drones. And America, with $1 trillion defense budget, has not been able to defeat Iran. So money is not necessarily the answer. It's the way you strategize and plan your defense rather than just throwing money. And as your previous interviewee said, the Ministry of Defense is infamous for wasting money. So I do think that Rachel Reeves has been very, very prudent in not just throwing money at this, and because she knows it's not just a matter of that. And also, I think that Iran, and the figures have not been explained, all this extra money. They just dash these figures out and don't tell us why do you need this amount. They just say 18 billion or 10 billion. We want to know exactly what's being spent on.
Well, hang on. I think you need to read the Strategic Defence Review, which came out, which Lord Robertson authored. I mean, that laid out exactly what the strategy was, what the money should be spent on, and what the threat was. So I think you're being a bit unfair there.
Yes, probably I am. But I just feel I don't trust the defence industry, and I think they're always after more money. They want to get money out of the government, and they'll encourage any politician to say anything so that we'll have to spend more. I
don't think. Sorry, David. I don't think this is as a result of the defence industry, as you put it, sort of lobbying for more money. And I think you're right in terms of the Ministry of Defence have been appalling at spending public money. Their procurement policies have been outrageous, and they've never really been held to account for it. So I don't blame a Prime Minister or a Chancellor for thinking, well, are they going to spend this money properly? But their problem here is that it has been outlined exactly what they would be spending the money on. So I think as long as the procurement processes are correct, we do need to spend this money, and we can all see the threats that we face now.
Yes, I agree. One more, can I just say again, Iain? Look at America. It spent $1 trillion in defense, and they can't beat Iran, whose defense budget is like 100th of that. Do you know? So doesn't that make you question the figures that these people bandy about we need to spend so much more? Don't you think, is that really true, or is there a cheaper way to do things?
We can't do things just by comparing ourselves with America.
No, true.
There is a direct threat to this country, not just from Russia, but predominantly from Russia at the moment. And at the moment, we have no air defences that could defend this country if there was a Russian missile attack. That is a disgraceful state of affairs. And you can't blame Keir Starmer for that. You have to blame the previous government that allowed our air defences to be diminished to an extent where, they basically don't exist anymore. So I'm not making this a party political thing. There's a lot of blame to go round, but we can't shy away from the fact that this is a discussion we need to have. But I think most of the country understands now that we do need to increase defence spending by far more than the government seems to be willing to do. David, thank you very much indeed. We'll come to more of your calls in just a few minutes' time. What's your reaction to John Healy resigning? And let's talk about defence spending. The Treasury seem to think that we don't need to spend any more money on defence. They've let the Prime Minister, month after month, make quite trenchant speeches about the need to spend more money on defence. And then Rachel Reeves cuts the rug from under his feet, and he's too weak to be able to say no. 7:31 on LBC. Matt Hewitt has the news headlines.
Sir Keir Starmer's insisted his military spending plans will keep us safe in response to the resignation of his Defence Secretary. John Healey stepped down, blaming what he saw as the PM's inability to commit enough resources to the country's defences. Donald Trump's cancelled scheduled strikes on Iran tonight because he says peace talks are bearing fruit. Earlier, the US president threatened to assume total control of Iran's oil and gas industries in the not-too-distant future. And a weight loss pill's been approved for private use in the UK. The Wegovy tablet could become available in weeks for eligible adults. LBC weather, the rain becoming more showery into the evening, but heavy bursts are still possible. Drier later in the night, staying windy for many, lows of 9 to 15 degrees.
This is LBC.
Get iPhone 17 in the Vodafone Business Summer Sale. iPhone 17 is built for business with all-day battery life and the powerful A19 chip for fast, efficient performance. Experience it all on the best network for business and save £300. Hurry, offer ends the 22nd of July. Vodafone Business.
Businesses with up to 9 employees only. Based on iPhone 17 and 24-month unlimited airtime plan. Best network is awarded at the Mobile Industry Awards. Saving calculated over 36 months.
You think a football coach just teaches how to kick a ball?
Nah, a football coach gives you the skills to win in life.
I stay focused for 90 minutes.
So a 60-minute exam is no sweat.
Job interviews don't scare me. I'm up against 11 players every week.
And I'm not just captaining a team. I'm prepping for when I'm running my own company.
A coach's influence goes beyond the pitch. That's why Chase Bank has funded over 6,000 grassroots coaching qualifications. Search Chase.
Gordon Ramsay here. Somewhere out there, someone is trying to sear a steak in a pan that belongs in the bin. Don't be that person. That's why I use Hexlad in my kitchens. Their hybrid range gives you the durability of cast iron, the searing power of stainless steel, and the white, clean ease of non-stick, all in one pan. Pro-level performance with every cook. Shop the summer sale now at hexlad.co.uk.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
7:33 on LBC. We'll come back to your calls on John Healey's resignation and what the government should be doing about defence spending in just a moment. 0345 6060 973. And if you phone now, you will get through. There's plenty of lines available. Now, over in Washington, Donald Trump has posted on his Truth Social platform to say he's cancelled the plans to attack Iran again tonight. Well, who would have thought? He'd also vowed earlier today to take control of Karg Island and the rest of Iran's oil infrastructure. Well, what is he up to this time? Let's talk to Negar Mojtahedi, who's a journalist and presenter for Iran International English, who's also the host of the Eye for Iran podcast, and she joins us from Washington, D.C. Negar, good to talk to you again. Donald Trump seems to have done another flip-flop.
Yes, this is very much part of his playbook where he makes a very grand threat. He steps back. But then the thing that makes his threats so threatening is that at times he does follow through. So in many ways, he is the wild card here, and you never know what you're going to get and what the reasonings could be. I mean, we've got the World Cup happening. He might want to be calming the markets again. So there's a number of different possibilities as to this flip-flop. And he recently said that he spoke to, quote, the highest level of authority in Iran or of leadership in Iran. So I don't know what that quite means and who he's referring to, because at the end of the day, we still don't really know who's running the country.
What about this issue of Karg Island?
I mean, he said that he was going to take it. This is something that, as a journalist, we've been hearing for quite some time, and I do think that it is a possibility. Going for Karg Island, which is where a majority of the oil exports, crude oil, goes through, and as well as potentially even taking the island of Resh nearby in the Persian Gulf, would give him a very strategic point to be able to open up the Strait of Hormuz. So it might be a means of not only collapsing the Iranian regime's economy, But to be able to take control of the Strait of Hormuz, you would need boots on the ground for that. But again, it would be in very limited resources for that. It wouldn't be a full ground invasion. A few months ago, at the start of the war, I spoke with Senator Ted Cruz, and he did talk about the possibility of limited ground invasion. So this is maybe something that they definitely have had in mind for quite some time.
And in terms of what these conversations are that takes place between Trump or the Trump administration and the Iranian regime, what are you hearing about? What level are they at?
The Iranians pretty much are denying everything. I mean, even when it came to Trump's latest message on social media that he's spoken again to the highest leadership of the Iranian regime, and he decided not to strike because, things are going so well with these talks. Well, the Iranian regime denies that full stop. Who's telling the truth in this situation? It's really hard to tell. In many ways, they're behaving in quite a similar fashion and are not necessarily negotiating in good faith here on either side from that respect. Since March, the CNN is reporting that Trump has said 37 times that they are close to the deal. And yet here we are.
Indeed, here we are. Nega, thank you very much indeed. That's Nega Mojtahedi from Iran International English, and also the host of the podcast I for Iran. 7:37. Right, let's go back to talking about the resignation of the Defence Secretary, John Healey, which, whatever your politics are, this is a major political event. It's what both Keir Starmer and the Labour Party need like a hole in the head, because there is, of course, the by-election in Makerfield and the two by-elections in Scotland also on June the 18th. And if you're Andy Burnham tonight thinking, well, am I going to become Prime Minister? Does this make his ascension to the office, and I think that's an apt word to use, more likely or not? I don't know. Now, some breaking news. The junior Defence Minister, Pamela Nash, has just resigned. She wasn't a junior minister. She was the parliamentary private secretary at the Ministry of Defence. But that is a signal that possibly some of the other junior defence ministers might resign. Al Khan's has more than hinted that he might. Luke Pollard is another one. And then I think there's Louise Sander-Jones. So it'll be very interesting to see if any of those follow suit. If the whole of the ministerial team in the MOD resigned, that would surely have to call into question whether this defence investment programme could be published anytime soon. They'd have to surely go back to the drawing board, wouldn't they? Or do you think they should stick their feet in the ground and say, or it's basically sticking your fingers in your ears, isn't it? Saying, la, 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 I can't hear you, we're progressing anyway. Nigel says, very little mention of the 14 years of Conservative rule that has brought us to this position. Labour have had less than 2 years to rectify it, and rectify it they must. But Labour's rule represents less than 10% of that timeline. The situation has been caused by successive governments. Well, I did make that point to James Heappey, the former Defence Minister. He said that the decisions made up to 2014 could be justified, but after the Russian invasion of Crimea, they should have taken this more seriously. Well, it's very easy to say these things in hindsight, but a lot of people were warning after the invasion of Crimea that we needed to increase defence spending, but nobody listened. Alex is in Edinburgh. Alex, hi.
Good evening. I think this is going to be the end of Starmer for two reasons. First of all, what he's been saying in public in his speeches and what's been going on with the Ministry of Defence, funding the Defence Equipment Plan, they don't match up. So I think he's being disingenuous and misleading people when it comes to the defence. Then we have the fact that he is, despite, as you say, being First Lord of the Treasury, unable to control Reeves and Miliband and get the Treasury to pony up the money. So I think he's a weak Prime Minister, and the resignation will be the final thing that sees the end of Starmer's government.
Well, I do kind of agree with you, because I think the moment that a Prime Minister can't say to another minister, OK, you've given me your reasons, but I don't agree. I'm the Prime Minister. I'm ordering you to do this. And he clearly hasn't been able to say that to Rachel Reeves. That is the moment the power really, really starts to slip away. And we all know that it's been slipping away already. So I do agree with you. I can't see that he will be Prime Minister. If we're talking in September, I just can't see that he will still be Prime Minister by then. But look, we've predicted the end of Prime Ministers over the years quite often, most of the time correctly. We'll see whether this one lasts or not. Alex, thank you. Neil says, after John Healey, are you going to talk about your mate Nigel Farage and his now openly homophobic views on the pride flag, Ian? Or are you going to continue defending this racist, homophobic piece of work? Well, you'll be delighted to know that at 9 o'clock we will be talking about the Reform UK policy of urging their councils not to fly the pride flag and not to fund pride events on the basis that LGBT people have won all the campaigns that they fought over the years. I think that's going to be quite an interesting debate. So glad that you'll be listening, Neil. Right, let's go to Simon in Kilburn. Simon, hi.
Good evening, Ian. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you. What would you like to tell us?
So I was just thinking, I don't know if I'm allowed to use this word, but how in hell can a defence secretary not have seen his own defence spending review until it was about to be published? I mean, who was running the situation? Who was creating this thing? He's just a performing monkey for somebody else. What's going on there?
Well, I don't know if you've read John Healey's resignation letter, but in that letter, he actually says, well, you gave me the defence improvement plan on Monday. And I'm thinking, what? It was given to you? You're the Defence Secretary. Surely you should have been overseeing it. So I kind of agree. Well, I do agree with you, Simon. This is further proof that it is the Treasury that is at the root of this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what's actually going on there? Who's actually running things? How are decisions being made? But at the end of the day, you give somebody a job, you say, okay, you're the Defence Secretary. Surely you then value that person's input into all things defence.
Yes, you do, but that doesn't mean to say that a Prime Minister necessarily has to agree with the Defence Secretary. I don't know what vintage you are, Simon, but if you're of my vintage, you remember the Westland crisis at the beginning of 1986, when Michael Heseltine, the Defence Secretary, stormed out of the Cabinet because the Prime Minister of the day, Margaret Thatcher, didn't agree with him over the future of Westland helicopters. He wanted it to be sold to a European consortium. She wanted it to go to an American company. And there was all sorts of skullduggery and briefings and all the rest of it, but it resulted in him quitting because the Prime Minister, in his view, was undermining him.
Yeah, well, there we go. I mean, I am of a vintage to remember, but not in this country at the time, so I don't remember those details. No
excuse, Simon. No excuse, honestly.
Yeah, but yeah. So I just wonder. I mean, that came to my mind as well. Who was actually running defence at the time? Was it the Defence Minister, or was it being done behind the scenes by someone else?
Well, I think it's not unusual for there to be rows between cabinet ministers over the spending of money on their departments. Every cabinet minister thinks they should have more money to spend in their particular area than the Treasury does. And it's normally they come to a compromise. But clearly here, John Healey has realised that there is no way that there can be a compromise. And I think what will be going on now behind the scenes is Al Khan's saying, OK, well, I won't resign, but I've got to have my way on this because I cannot sign up to this defence improvement plan on the current basis. And if Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer don't agree to that, then he will be gone too. And his resignation is not as serious. He's a junior minister, not the Secretary of State, but added to that of the Secretary of State. I mean, you do really have to wonder how, and they won't want this argument, as I say, because of the by-election, they won't want this argument to go on for very long. But we're now, 8 hours after the resignation and still no replacement for John Healey at the Ministry of Defence.
Doesn't it?
Doesn't it? Thank you very much indeed, Simon. It's a bit extreme for Defence Secretary to resign at the start of the World Cup. He should have taken a sickie instead, says the ever-cynical Dean. I think he had his tongue firmly in his cheek on that one. Let me tell you who's on Cross Question from 8. We have the Labour MP for Filton and Bradley Stoke, coincidentally a very big defence infrastructure area, Claire Hazelgrove. Baroness Pauline Neville-Jones, Conservative peer, former chair of the British Joint Intelligence Committee and former Security Minister. Zoe Strimple, a columnist for the Sunday Telegraph, and the Reverend Steve Clark, founder of the Oasis Community Learning Trust. 7:46 on LBC.
LBC this morning on Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
Rioters clashing with police. Northern Ireland MP Jim Allister talked about the possibility of an importation of an alien culture. Northern Ireland Secretary Hilary Benn is beheading an alien culture, Mr. Benn.
It is abhorrent, and of course it is. It's a terrible thing to do.
It is or it is not.
It is alien to all right-thinking people.
Kemi Badenoch is beheading an alien culture.
Yes, it is alien to British culture. We never used to hear about these things.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
McDonald's Taste of the Tournament has arrived. Get the sweet Carolina.
Jane says, I'm not questioning John Healey here, but how can it be right for government ministers in such critical roles to be able to resign with immediate effect? Unless you are sacked and made to pack your bags, in the real world, people, especially those in senior critical positions, have to give notice. To avoid chaos, as we're now seeing with commentators rubbing their hands at this high news event with no replacement. It's ridiculous that a minister can be here in the morning and gone in the evening. How is this considered okay when they're serving the country? Well, I don't think any minister resigns lightly. John Healey is not the sort of person to be impetuous. And they're giving up an awful lot. I mean, a seat round the cabinet table is an important thing for anybody who's ever sat there. So I don't think he will have been doing it gratuitously, which you kind of almost seem to be hinting at. There are other ministers in any government department where the Secretary of State resigns, so it's not as if there is no continuity at all. But I mean, it is an argument, I suppose, that they should have to give notice. But how can you then go and stand in the House of Commons and account for your department when everybody knows that you've resigned? I mean, that wouldn't work, would it? David's in Cheam. Hi, David.
Hello, Ian. Good evening. My question or theory is surely Ed Miliband and the zero climate sort of race to 2030 should be suspended to enable the government to sort of move money in towards the defence. Because if it's true that in 4 years the Russians are going to be marching into Whitehall, well, if they're in Whitehall, well, who cares about the climate?
Well, first of all, I don't think anyone's suggesting, even those who would like to see us treble the money that we spend on defence, I don't think anybody's suggesting the Russians will be rolling into Whitehall, but it's perfectly feasible that they could launch attacks on this country. And indeed, a lot of people are predicting that. And if you listen to the War Game podcast, you will know how underprepared we are to defend ourselves against Russian missile attacks. So I don't think that argument really stands up. I think Ed Miliband is not going to be the only department that would be affected by cuts in spending to fund extra defence spending. The rumour is that most departments, I think with the exception of health, would have 1% cut from their budgets. Well, a lot of the departments will say, well, we can't cut anymore. We've cut so much over the last 15 years that we'll barely be able to function if we cut anymore. Never really bought that argument. I think anybody could probably find savings of 1% in a budget. The fact is, Rachel Reeves is saying, well, you can have $13.5 billion. If you compare that to what the Germans are now spending on defence, it doesn't touch the sides. And I think we need to be spending probably somewhere between 30 and 50 billion extra. But it's got to be clear what that money is going to be spent on.
Well, I think if they give him 20 million, he may have accepted it. But I think there's a little bit of a bullied him slightly. And as I say, I think some of these climate control or climate issues should be curtailed for 5 years, whilst we get the military to a strength that, the government should be expecting.
Well, I don't disagree with you. Thank you very much indeed. Steve says, defence spending, just listen to yourselves. The country is near rioting because of poor prospects for an increasing majority, and all you elites can think of is more money for the military to buy more overpriced toys so we can swagger about thousands of miles away on Russia and China's borders. Ridiculous. No, Steve, it's you that's ridiculous. Matt is in Oxford. Hello, Matt.
Thanks for speaking to me again, Ian. It's nice to talk to you. Yeah, that was kind of ridiculous, wasn't it? My feelings around Starmer, particularly in his authority, was that he never had it, and we never granted it to him. From the moment he was elected, the commentary was about the fact that the majority he had was broad but thin. So immediately started, and then we became hysterical. So you remember we got hysterical about glasses and dresses and coats and so on. So immediately we ramped up from the word go this kind of sense of over-expectation, hyperbole, and kind of, righteous indignation. And that's the atmosphere we live in. And
well, no, I'm going to push back on that, because I think when he was in opposition, Keir Starmer was very clear that he was going to be different from the sleazy Tories. He wouldn't be caught in any scandals about sort of lobbying or freebies or anything like that. And within a month of becoming Prime Minister, we find out that he's accepted £20,000 worth of clothes and glasses from his best friend, Lord Ali. Well, I think a lot of people were quite shocked by that, because they had believed his hyperbole that he was going to be different from the likes of Boris Johnson. And then people found out, well, what's different about that?
Well, we were very much encouraged to see it on a similar level. That was the thing. We were, as I say, all kind of communication around it, even in the mainstream media, kind of set a bar that was already very high, and it keeps pushing up, and it's very difficult to maintain.
Sorry, what were we expected to do? Not report on it?
Well, the other thing, no, it wasn't that we weren't supposed to report on it, but don't you remember quite how much commentary and analysis and speculation and conjecture and hypothesis?
Yeah, because it was rank hypocrisy. That was the problem, and part of our role in the media is to call out rank hypocrisy.
That's true, but it's a relatively brief statement to say that that's rankly hypocritical. We spent hours and hours, hundreds of hours, discussing details that we kind of already knew, and we just stayed in a space of self-righteous indignation. And it's so unhealthy, and that's one of the great things about the media these days, particularly social media. It's a giant resentment factory. It encourages us to stay in a place of self-righteous indignation.
That is true. I don't remember it going on for weeks and weeks and weeks, I must admit, because, look, news events overtake other news events. And so if there's a big story that overtakes it, it kind of disappears from view. And then people criticise us because we haven't then been talking about this, like Nigel Farage's £5 million donation, which we have spent a huge amount of time talking about. But you wouldn't think that if you looked at a lot of social media. Thank you very much indeed, Matt. Let's move on to Miles in Croydon. Hi, Miles.
Yeah, hi. Just listening to your commentary there about the amount of money that you think should be found for defence. And I'm not challenging that at all. The world has changed dramatically during this Parliament with what's happening in the US and what's happening in Europe. So my question is it time now to rethink whether we have the wealth to continue the triple lock on pensions?
Absolutely.
And should we challenge that now? And what would that save in terms of contributing to a much larger defence budget?
Well, I mean, it would contribute. It wouldn't be a massive amount, but I may be wrong on these figures, but I'm pretty sure I remember it would save about £650 million a year. Well, that's not going to get you too far, but at least it would be a contribution.
But doesn't the number grow as you each year on year? So by the end of this Parliament and beyond that into the next Parliament, presumably the number becomes quite significant per year.
I don't know what it goes up to, but yes, it would be a growing number. And I've been advocating this for a very long time, as have my colleagues Tom Swarbrick and Ben Kentish. But as I say, whenever you have politicians on the programme to talk about it, they'll say one thing in the studio and then another thing when the microphone goes off.
I think one thing that is clear is there's been such a dramatic change in the landscape during this Parliament that any commitments that were made in the last general election, you could argue, need to be revisited simply because of the significant changes, particularly on defence, particularly on, the support from the US.
Yeah, well, I've just got on my screen here, the Office for Budget Responsibility said the annual cost of the triple lock policy is estimated to reach $15.5 billion by 2030. So, I mean, that you make a very, very good point. Always nice to finish off an hour with a point well made. So thank you very much for doing that, Miles. Now, Iain, you are sounding as woolly as the top tier of Starmer's government. Sleepy Healy has bottled it because he can't cut the mustard, just like young Wesley. Starmer needs to get rid of his woolly top tier Lammy, Miliband, Reeves and Mahmood. They're all blagging it and they're not in Starmer's league. Then he will get my vote, says John in Deptford. Well, I'm sure Keir Starmer will listen to that advice. What you don't say is who you think they should be replaced by in Keir Starmer's cabinet, because that would be much more difficult. Right, you can be sure that this subject will rear its ugly head in cross-question, but only if one of you asks a question on it. 0345 6060 973. Joining me will be, making her debut on the show, what a day to make her debut on cross-question, Claire Hazelgrove, Labour MP for Filton and Bradley Stoke, Baroness Pauline Neville-Jones, former Security Minister, Conservative peer, Zoe Strimple, columnist for the Sunday Telegraph, and the Reverend Steve Chalk, founder of Oasis Community Learning, a trust which represents 56 academy schools across England. Good panel. Let's have some good questions. 0345 6060 973.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, says the government's defence funding plan will provide the military with the resources needed to keep the country safe. John Healey quit as Defence Secretary earlier, saying insufficient money's going into the armed forces. James Heappey, former Conservative Armed Forces Minister, told LBC his position was untenable.
The chiefs had said that they needed $28 billion to stand still. The Cabinet Secretary and the National Security Advisor had written to the Prime Minister to say the absolute floor in the increase in defence spending is $18 billion. And John was being asked to swallow 13.5. So an honourable man put in an impossible position really had only one choice.
And within the last half an hour, Pamela Nash MP has resigned as a parliamentary private secretary in the Ministry of Defence. She's criticised delays and difficulties with securing funding for the Defence Investment Plan. Donald Trump's cancelled planned strikes on Iran tonight. The US president says a deal is close. 3 more men had been jailed for violence in Southampton last week. It was over the way police dealt with the murder of Henry Novak. And the UK's first weight loss pill's been approved by the medicines regulator. The Wegovy tablet could be available privately within weeks. In the city, the FTSE 100's closed up 49 points at 10,303. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.16. LBC weather, outbreaks of rain continuing tonight, drier later, lows of 9 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 2 minutes past 8 on LBC. Welcome to Thursday's Cross Question. Joining me on the panel tonight, to my left, Zoe Strimple, columnist for the Sunday Telegraph. Welcome back. Next to her is Baroness Pauline Neville-Jones, Conservative peer, former chair of the British Joint Intelligence Committee and former Security Minister. Good to see you, Pauline. To my right, making her debut on the programme, Claire Hazelgrove, Labour MP for Filton and Bradley Stoke. What a day to be on the show. And
Thanks for having me.
I know you were on another show earlier on when the resignation was announced.
I was.
Which, what a good blooding. And next to Claire is the Reverend Steve Chalk, founder of Oasis Community Learning, a trust which represents 56 academy schools across England. The lines are open for your questions, 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp on that number too, and you can text 84850. And we'd love it if you'd watch us on YouTube, on the LBC YouTube channel, the LBC app or Global Player.
Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Cross Question. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Right, let's go to our first question. It's a text question from Andrew, who says, is the resignation of the Defence Secretary today now a terminal blow to Sir Keir Starmer's premiership? And if members of the panel were advising Sir Keir Starmer, what would they be advising him now to do? Pauline. Well, I would normally go to the person representing the government, but since she's making her debut on the show, I always put debutants last, so to be kind. So, Pauline.
I was ready there.
Well, I don't think it makes his life more difficult. I mean, the government is showing signs of just falling apart. He's got the first thing he has to do is to appoint another Defence Secretary, which he still hasn't. Which he still hasn't. It's taken a whole day and he hasn't. And I think he may have difficulty because any occupant of the job, may only have it for a few weeks. So quite a lot of reluctance, I would think, on people's part, to chance their arm, particularly when the person who's resigned, John Healey, commands a very great deal of respect across the House. I mean, not just in the Labour Party, but I think, on other benches. So he's a serious man. So it opens up quite a big issue, quite apart from the damage it does to the government. So my answer is, I think, he needs increasingly, if he's going to stay there, actually to take care of the stability of his government. And you're going to find that very hard.
Well, particularly when it's quite clear that it's Rachel Reeves pulling the strings here, and that I think Keir Starmer wanted the money to be given to the Defence Improvement Plan, and she said no. And he's so weak that he couldn't overrule her.
Yes, I mean, the letter is very revealing on that point. It says, and the Treasury, Reeves was unwilling, and you were unable. Prime Minister, prisoner of Treasury.
Not the first time that's happened, though, is it?
No, it isn't. But it's,
Tony Blair had it for 10 years.
Well, it shows if you run your prison suitably, you can still be Prime Minister. But this is a situation where the doors are closing in on him.
Yeah. Zoe.
Well, it's hard to know, which is the final straw with government. It feels like they happen, every day almost. I think what this has shown for me is that there are these kind of very high quality people still in this government, and it is a real blow to see one of them go. And you do think, what does this leave? Because the focus is usually on incompetence and U-turns, whatever. And Healey has had such a clear line on this, which I think is absolutely the right one. So I think just on the level of losing an incredibly, clear-sighted defense minister, that's almost more the problem than yet another blow to a clearly flailing government. And, these are much bigger existential problems are being raised by this, because the party's going to, it's always got this problem with the pacifists and we shouldn't drop bombs and enable the, colonialists of the Middle East, whatever, the America, Trump, et cetera, et cetera. There's always that bit of the party, and that's always against the people who have a more kind of clear-sighted, slightly more, much more realistic view. And I do worry that will the replacement, where's the replacement, if there is one, going to fit in the political in the infighting political tensions of the party between the kind of anti-war and the pro-war. So the other thing is, reading Healy's letter, you just realize, whatever Starmer does, when these threats come, the fact that this spending is necessary to just participate in kind of coalitions against enemies. There's no hope of, if there's an actual war that Britain has to fight, as a side in and of itself. We're so far from being able to do that. It's kind of, for me, these bigger questions are much more pressing. I think, the Starmer government isn't going to limp on for much longer. And the question of where Labour is going to go with the whole concept of war, right, wrong, might, right, the West, the East, these are the questions.
Okay, Steve
It's rather shocking that he was shut out of the discussion of the issues,
Yeah, because he makes clear in his letter he only got the final text of the Defence Improvement Plan on Monday.
On Monday, yeah.
And you're thinking, well, shouldn't you have been writing it?
Yeah, well, this had big international implications, as you were implying.
Well, I'm just waiting for a Truth Social post from Donald Trump on it, aren't you?
Or Elon Musk.
Well, possibly both. Well, of course, Elon Musk is in Moscow at the moment with Elon Musk's father is in Moscow at the moment with Tommy Robinson, apparently. Steve Chalk.
I think it goes beyond the fact that the Treasury seem to run everything. And as you've quite rightly said, Ian, this isn't the first time. I've never been in government, but the job I do means that I work alongside various government departments, the MOJ, the DFE, the Home Office, etc., etc. And I've been aware for years and years, you can work through plans and then it has to be signed off by the Treasury. And if it doesn't get signed off by the Treasury, you're stuck. So I think the biggest thing in this is Keir's ability to tell us why he's making the decisions he's making. We all know that if you spend the money here, you can't spend it there and you can't spend it there. We know that, don't we? So
to govern is to choose.
Yeah, you've got to choose, and then you've got to be clear. You've got to be clear. You've got to tell people why we're doing this and not that. So Labour's manifesto was called Change. But I think it's as easy as saying this is part of the change plan. This is part of the change plan. We've raised this as part of the change plan. We're doing that as part of the change plan. We can't fund this because of the change plan. So if you can explain why you're doing what you're doing, your clear vision, then people understand the what about the whole thing. So it's about communication as much as anything else.
But that gets to the root of the problem, doesn't it? Because there are so few people within this government at cabinet level who are capable of coming on programmes like this and explaining to the British public. And on this programme, we do give people a bit more of a chance to, you don't necessarily just get the 3-minute interview. If there's a big announcement, we'll have someone on for an hour and they can take calls and they can sort of explain it till the cows come home.
But he was the man who actually said this is an important issue at the Munich Security Conference. He was the one who told us that the governments leave dealing with these issues and spending the money until too late, and it mustn't happen now. And here he is. The increase that he's going to allow will allow 0.08%, less than one tenth of a percent.
But in fairness, we
defence expenditure.
Yet to see the defence investment plan, and so I think that's really important to say as well. We've seen John Healy's letter today, and I do want to say, sure, but we haven't publicly, and so I don't want to speculate on that. And clearly, it's still being worked on. I think that was quite clear from the letter as well. I am sorry to see John Healy leave government.
How can that be? Because he's resigned, so therefore he thinks there is no prospect of it being changed because the Prime Minister has told him so.
And that's absolutely his view, as we've seen today. But what we've seen also today is, for example, the Deputy Prime Minister coming out and saying he's very confident that we will be meeting our commitment.
Doesn't it?
Well, he is a Deputy Prime Minister, and he has said that he is confident that we will will meet our commitments when it comes to spend and investment ahead of that important NATO leaders summit in just a few weeks' time. And so I think that's important as well. But as I said, I really do respect John Healey. A lot of us, pretty much everybody does across my party. It's a shame to see him leave government today. But we have done an awful lot when it comes to defence investment already, and we have been leading on this. And the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has been for a long time. So what we've done initially is build back from those cuts that were brought in under the last Conservative government. They took defence spend down to 2.3%. We've put that back to 2.5%. And that's now the highest level that it's been at since we were last in government. We've got that commitment to deliver up to 2.6% by next spring, and then on to 3% by the end of this Parliament.
No, that's absolutely wrong. The commitment now is to 2.68%. So from 2027 to go to 2030, as Pauline says, they're going to go from 2.6 to 2.68. Surely they can do better than that.
Again, I think it's really important to say the defence investment plan is not out yet.
Well,
we do need to wait and see.
Come on, don't take us
because I'm genuinely not. As it stands, the commitment is to 2.6% in next spring, to 3% by the end of this Parliament.
But John Healey in his letter tells us that it's not now. That's the problem.
Yeah, but the plan isn't out yet, so give it time. We do need to judge the plan on its merits.
Well, he has done, and he's the Defence Secretary.
But it's not out yet. It's not out. We do need to see it, and we can make judgments off the back of that.
You are saying that you think that you can judge it better than the guy who's actually read it and was a Defence Secretary.
No, I'm saying it's not out yet, so I can't judge it better or worse. We can't judge it.
But you're talking as if he hasn't resigned.
No, he has resigned. I'm sorry to see him go. But the plan isn't public yet. Clearly, it's being worked on. I think that's something that's come through strongly. We do need to wait to see the plan. Let me approach it from a different angle then. Well,
let's say when it is published and it does say 2.68%, what would you say then?
Well, again, I'm not going to speculate on plans that are not public yet, and they're therefore not confirmed. If it was done and ready to go, we'd have it in front of us today. Clearly, that's not the case.
They wanted to publish it today.
But clearly, it's not done and ready to be published. Otherwise, we'd have it in front of us for this conversation tonight. We don't. I'm not going to speculate on government spend. I am not the Chancellor of the Exchequer. I'm not the Prime Minister. And I think it's really important that we look at the work that we've done. But we do need to look at the work that we've done. We've brought back that investment that was cut under the Conservatives. But more than that, we've brought back and boosted troop morale as well, and done a lot of work to make sure that we're supporting our armed forces. Yes, I mean, our armed forces have recently had the highest pay rise in almost 20 years. We've improved 1,200 military homes that were in dire need of refurbishment. We've done an awful lot to do that, and there's more to come.
I think the problem with all of this is that there's this incessant kind of robotic reference to growth. Now, all this problem is about money. There's no money. We have to take money from things that already don't have money to put it into this money pot. And meanwhile, the welfare bill is kind of completely enormous and growing all the time. One simple fix for not having any money is to encourage business. That's one way to get people to, pay tax, growth. But this government has done the exact opposite. And I'm not saying that the Conservatives were that much better. As you say, they hollowed out the defence budget as well. And I'm not sure, I don't know the statistics about
Well, it was the Conservatives that hollowed it out.
Yes, okay.
It really was.
We're talking about,
We've been increasing it.
We're talking about the present. You can increase and increase, but there's no money in the system. It's all being...
But there is.
There's money. It's just
growing economy in the G7.
We can't have four people speaking at once.
It's moving money from pots to pot. This is all the tension. If there was more money, there would be less, everyone knows that's the answer. The question is how you get there. And I just think all these references to growth, I think this government's real mistake has been in kind of doing everything in its power to discourage where the money would come from. And so it's going to remain this kind of tortured, hopeful progress towards this tiny, increase to 2.6 and then 3% by 2030. But
that hasn't been the case. We now do have the fastest growing economy in the G7. That's significant improvement. And also before the US's war with Iran, we were seeing really good progress as well. Inflation coming down, borrowing coming down, interest rates coming down, which means that people's mortgages and their cost of living was improving as well. So this isn't just growth. This is about improving living standards. And we're taking action still to be able to do even more on that as well. No, employment was coming down before the US's war in Iran. So it's not just growth or a meaningless word. This is about improving our country and making things better and fairer for people. That's been our priority.
We're in a point in the geopolitical moment where we can't just say, oh, as soon as there's a conflict in the Middle East, that's it. Like, oh, well, goodbye to our... there needs to be something stronger than that. So
that's why we've been investing in defence spend as well. We've been doing both at the same time. Because it's not an either or. It's never been an either or.
This is why I say what you've got to do, whoever you are. We all live in a complicated world, don't we? I live in a complicated world and lead a very large organisation. We've got 6,000 staff just in this country and around the world. It's all of these things are complex because there's never enough money to do everything you need to do. So you have to be clear about your what and your why, your mission. People can swallow, I've discovered over the years of leading the charity I lead, people can swallow tough news, but they've got to know why that's tough and what the good choices you're making.
And to be fair to Keir Starmer, he has been clear about the threats that this country faces. He's made speech after speech that lay it out, and I don't know, Pauline, whether you would agree with this, but he has been clear about that and seemed to understand the threats.
This is why the decision is so surprising and actually so appalling, that there's just a great gap between language and money.
Yeah, but I think the point I'm trying to make is that he's actually communicated it well, I think, in comparison to maybe some other things. Yeah. And I think he has led the country to understand that the threats that we face are far greater than they have been, and therefore more money needs to go in. But because of his perilous political position, he hasn't got the power to enforce his view onto the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Would you agree with that?
No, I think we've still got to see the defence investment plan. You're going to get bored with me saying this, because I do think it's really important that we have that plan in front of us and we see, therefore, the outcomes. We're not in that place today. Right. But I do really agree that actually Munich and other speeches that the Prime Minister has given, he's been to my constituency many times. We're the home of defence procurement in the UK. We have fantastic small, medium and prime defence companies, and his support and leadership has been very clear.
I'm going to ask you, when the Defence Improvement Plan is published, although unfortunately I'm on holiday for the next 2 weeks, but if it's published after that, on the day it's published, I'm going to get you back in the studio and see what you really make of it.
You can have me, or you can have someone, you might have someone far more interesting than me.
I doubt that very much. 18 minutes past 8.
LBC.
At Waitrose, you know you're a food lover when the standout summer party
Does this show that none of the other Labour figures who want to replace Starmer have any more chance of solving this crisis than he does? Well, Labour MP Rachel Maskell, who briefly lost the party whip after voting against the government over welfare reforms, has told LBC that as Labour MPs, we're not going to tolerate welfare cuts if it comes to it. Now, Rachel Maskell is part of the awkward squad of Labour MPs. I'm suspecting from what we've heard that you're not part of that awkward squad.
Your words, not mine. I respect all my colleagues and their views. But look, I haven't spoken to anybody who's said that. That's not a common view that I've heard today. I think most people do recognise in the Parliamentary Labour Party that there are tough decisions here, as we've been talking about.
Even on welfare?
As in, we do need to make sure we're doing both. We need to make sure that we are doing more than this as well. Of course, we've been putting money into support and renew the NHS. We've been putting money in to improve our education system as well. It's not a case of welfare or defence. It's not a binary decision in that way.
Well, it is when there's only a certain amount of money to go around. And some budgets will, and as I said before, there's this famous phrase, to govern is to choose. You say what you're going to do and then work out how you're going to pay for it. And that involves decisions on spending.
Absolutely. But it's not just those two issues, it's everything across government. So I don't particularly see it myself as a binary decision between two areas of policy. What we're doing on welfare, I think, is the right approach. So we've just had the evidence closed for the TIMS review, looking at our broader welfare system. I've been putted into that on behalf of local people in my community as well. I think that we're co-producing the approach that we'll be taking with people who have disabilities and their representatives is a much better way of designing and shaping policy. Alan Milburn's report that just came out in the last couple of weeks looking at why we now have 1 in 8 young people not in education, employment or training is frankly quite a totemic report. And again, he's now looking at recommendations for how we actually tackle these issues for the long term. I talked about in the Commons myself last week, calling to make sure that hopefully we'll be looking at preventative routes into this as well. So this is a good way of designing policy and reform, and we'll follow that up as well.
What about the pensions triple lock? Because if you got rid of that, that would be 15 or 16 billion pounds by 2030. I mean, that would be a big contribution to increasing defence spending.
We committed to that in our manifesto throughout the course of this Parliament.
Breaking news, Al Carnes has resigned. Your reaction?
This keeps happening to me today. Look, again, I'm sorry to see Al go as well. I really like and rate Al. He's got fantastic experience, obviously, himself in our forces, and I pay tribute to that too. I haven't seen anything about what he said. I am hearing this directly from you.
Don't worry, you'll hear it. As soon as we get it, you'll hear it.
But I'm sorry to see that as well. Al has been a fantastic minister and I greatly respect him. But we do need to make sure that we are delivering this defence investment plan. We do need people to be making sure that that's happening within our Ministry of Defence and working collaboratively across government, with the Prime Minister, with the Chancellor, with other departments as needed for a whole government approach to this.
This is a government that is falling apart, isn't it?
No, it's not falling apart. You'll see replacements.
Well, you had West Streeting resigned. You've got now John Healey, now Al Carnes. I mean, how much more of this can Keir Starmer take?
It's a shame to lose all of them from government. It absolutely is. But that's their decision for very different reasons. For certainly when it comes to
well, I'm not sure they are particularly different with Al Carnes and West Streeting. They both want to be Prime Minister.
Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know about that from Al. We've heard about that from Wes.
I think we do know that.
But we've not heard that from Al. So we'll see what happens in his own words once we see those come through. But I do think it's important to say we've got brilliant people in our Parliamentary Labour Party, serious people as well, who do want to be able to
Nobody
step
seems
up
to want
and
to be Secretary of State for Defence, though. We're now 8:24. The resignation happened at midday. You would have thought that someone ought to have replaced him by now.
But we saw this when West Streeting decided to resign as well. We've got fantastic replacement, actually. And so making sure that we've got the right person in post is really important as well. And James Murray stepping up into that role was a fantastic
Are you a Keir Starmer
appointment.
loyalist? Do you want him to stay?
I think Keir is the right person at this moment in time. He has been driving this work on defence, actually. He has been the person who has made sure that was embedded throughout our work, including in our manifesto ahead of the election. He's been the leader who has responded to these volatile times. He's set up and helped lead that coalition of the willing when it comes to Ukraine. He's managed to navigate complicated dynamics with our partners in the US
Prime Minister
and
in
the
history.
EU. He is performing exceptionally well when it comes to our leadership on the world stage. And this is frankly what we're talking about today. And this is an area where we have been investing. We have built back from those conservative cuts, taking our defence spend down to 2.3%. He's already driven that and made tough decisions to do that. And I respect that.
Steve has been itching to get in.
I'm itching to get in because, Ian, you described this, and perhaps I talked about it earlier in this way. If you spend the money here, you can't spend it there. But it's more complicated than that because it's about efficiency. It's not just about how much cash you've got. It's how you go about spending it. Now, because of my job, by the way, Oasis doesn't just run schools. We run youth centres. We work with the MOJ, the Ministry of Justice. We work across the board delivering all sorts of community services in housing, etc. And what I find constantly is that money isn't well spent by big government departments. It's not well spent. There's so many layers of management. This must frustrate you out your brain, you know. So honestly, since the welfare state was set up, when Beveridge set up the welfare state, little known fact is the Beveridge report. A couple of years later, in 46, he went back to Downing Street with another report that never gets talked about, but you can look it up. And he said, the welfare state, the NHS is never going to work because what you've done is you've abandoned a key principle that I said should be put in place, and that is partnership between the voluntary sector, the community, and the professionals. We are, as Michael Marmot said in 2010, that huge report, and again in 2020, we are the most centralised country in Europe. We don't trust people. And because we don't trust people, we end up spending money on education and health that we need not spend. And I know that because we find other ways of doing it. But can you convince government, or the civil service really, to work with people? No, you can't. And therefore, there's more money in the kitty than we spend wisely. I think that's a really important point. And we need a government that grasps that and grasps the civil service.
Right. Al Carnes has published his resignation letter. Here's a paragraph from it. It's quite a long letter. I'm going to get the full text during the 8:30 news. He says, while I had no hand in the defence investment plan, I mean, that says a lot in itself, that distance does allow me to say plainly that it is not built for the threat that we face. It is neither transformative enough nor sufficiently funded. We're asking our armed forces to operate in a more dangerous world on a budget written for a calmer one. I'll resist the temptation to come to you on this, Claire. You'll be glad to hear.
You're welcome to.
But let's go to Zoe.
I mean, I think the question is, this is all noble and right, and I agree with the rationale. But how is this going to make Britain safer? That's my only concern. If everyone, is this kind of mass walkout in protest of insufficient defence, is that actually going to make the difference and get things over the line? Is that going to change what the Treasury does? I mean, we'll see in the report. But these, when good people with good rationale say, I don't want any part of this because it's not the right thing, it does make one think, okay, well, soon we're only going to have people left that don't see things this way. And I think things are going to get a lot harder. So he's absolutely right. This is completely the thing. This la-la land we live in, that things will somehow, we just live in these endless wars of attrition, these endless stalemates, these sort of ceasefire to ceasefire to ceasefire, and nothing ever, seems to bite long enough to really make the kind of significant changes. So, but what will it take? I don't know if another resignation is it.
And if we spent the money better, I was listening to you earlier, Iain, and you were talking about the lax way in which the Ministry of Defence has used money. That Ajax.
That's been going on for decades.
Exactly.
Do you remember in when Michael Heseltine was Defence Secretary in about 1984, he brought in Sir Peter Levine to review Ministry of Defence procurement. And he was a very successful businessman and wanted to bring sort of private sector input into it. Nothing has changed since those days.
Warrior tanks. So to my point, if you manage the money better, can you get more for your dollar than we are getting at the moment?
But that goes right through government, doesn't it? They've got to manage money better. Claire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, I'm sorry to see Al leave government. I'm not surprised, though, to your point. I'm not surprised that he hasn't had
the point that he
this is the one I am. As in, I'm not surprised that he didn't have a hand in developing the plan, though. He was a junior minister. That's not unusual across government. This is something that would be dealt with at the highest of levels. It's a 10-year strategic plan for investing in our national defence.
But it seems that John Healey didn't have any role in it either.
I don't know about that. There's reading between the lines in what he said. It's not precisely what he said.
No, it is exactly what he said.
It's more in terms.
On the way here, I got a message from the Times, and a breaking news story, and it said on Monday he was told that he was being slashed £8 billion.
But what it doesn't say is about any prior conversations before Monday, and I think that's important as well. We just don't know. We're speculating at the moment. But yeah, again, sorry to see Al leave government, but I agree. I think we do need people in who do want to be stepping up and delivering this. We've got a really important defence investment plan to deliver. There's a really important meeting of the NATO leaders on the 7th of July. Yeah. And
can
David
you imagine
Lammy
what Donald Trump is going to say to Keir
place.
Starmer at that, Pauline?
Well, this does undermine the Prime Minister's international reputation. I don't think any doubt about that. You know, it's one of the fundamentals. If you say defence is important, this is what happens. I mean, I can imagine what the Trump line's going to be. I think, you know, governments do collapse when internal disagreement gets too great. I think there's a very good chance the whole defence team is going to resign one by one. I think we may...
Well, Luke Pollard, if you're listening, we'll gladly give you a platform to do just that on the show. Just joking, because I know you won't.
But, you know, one of the reasons why we needed this defence plan actually was because it's actually part of the component of the industrial strategy, which is meant to lead to growth.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It is actually part of the recipe.
Yeah. And
the fact that the Treasury won't allow it to be financed at a level which allows it to do its defence job means that the Treasury is also undermining another part of the government's own strategy, which is growth through defence and industrial revival. So, I mean, it is an absolute nonsense.
Please don't say it hasn't been published yet.
No, I promise you I won't. I'll say something else, Ian, I promise.
Okay.
What I do want to say, though, is that obviously in the meantime, because this has been in development for a while with the Strategic Defence Review and then this Defence Investment Plan to follow it, that hasn't stopped us doing really important deals that have benefited British defence businesses. We've actually been able to negotiate 1,400 in the last 2 years. And so we've been getting on and doing that too.
When you have Lord Robertson, who wrote the Strategic Defence Review, basically saying he just wish he hadn't bothered now. When you had, on the Andrew Marr show earlier, General Sir Richard Barrons, who co-wrote it, saying that he wishes now he hadn't bothered because they haven't taken any notice of it. I mean, you've got to think that something is going wrong somewhere.
Well, you're not going to like what I'm going to say, Ian.
No,
but we do need to see the plan. I'm sorry.
Don't.
But once it's published, because then we can judge it on its merits, we cannot do that before it is in front of us. That's not reasonable or fair to do.
I'm going to break into my holiday if I have to.
I'm sorry about that. We shouldn't do that to you.
And I will blame you. Right, it's 8:33 on LBC. Let's get the news headlines with Darryl Jackson.
Al Khan has resigned as Armed Forces Minister just hours after John Healey resigned as Defence Secretary. He said the Prime Minister's defence spending plan isn't enough and he wasn't happy with the level of transformation in it. His Parliamentary Private Secretary Pamela Nash also resigned earlier this evening. Donald Trump says he's cancelled planned strikes on Iran tonight. The US president says it's because peace talks have been brought to the highest level of the Iranian leadership. And counter-terror police are now leading an investigation into a stabbing at a high school in Manchester on Tuesday. A 14-year-old girl who'd been arrested and detained under the Mental Health Act has now been released to police custody. LBC weather, outbreaks of rain continuing tonight. Drier later in the night with some clear spells, lows of 9 degrees.
This is LBC.
You know what you're getting with a football away game. The lucky shirt you wear.
Distance does allow me to say plainly that it's not built for the threat that we face. It is neither transformative enough nor sufficiently funded. We're asking our armed forces to operate in a more dangerous world on a budget written for a calmer one. I have sat in the rooms, seen the assessments, and spoken to the commanders who will be asked to do more with less. And I cannot in good conscience stand at the dispatch box and defend a level of investment I know to be inadequate to the task. A serious country funds its defence to meet the threat it actually faces, not the threat it wishes it faced. The same instinct that serious problems can be managed rather than faced, key sentence there, runs through the Northern Ireland Legacy Bill. I've worked to fix the bill from the inside, but it remains unfit for purpose. It risks failing the very veterans it claims to protect, men and women I served with, those I buried, friends alongside, people who did their duty under conditions most individuals in Westminster will never have to imagine. I set out the changes I believed were necessary and the lines which I could not in good conscience go beyond. Those lines have not been accepted. I have run out of room to argue this case honourably from inside government. A serving minister cannot ask fellow veterans to trust a process he no longer trusts himself. These two failures are the same failure. We ask soldiers to fight for this country. In return, we owe them the kit to do the job and the loyalty to stand by them when it's done. We're failing on both. The same failure of seriousness runs through how this country treats the people it asks the most of, in uniform and out of it. Now, there's a lot more that I could read out, but I mean, that Claire, is incredibly damning of the whole process, isn't it?
Well, it's, again, I'm sorry to see Al leave government, and I truly respect his service and everything he says there in relation to that. I did read the Prime Minister's response to John Healey's resignation letter, and if you don't mind, I'll just share a piece from that, because I think it answers some of the points in Al's letter there. The Prime Minister said that in terms of the Defence Investment Plan, it will provide the resources our military needs to keep us safe and the clarity British industry needs to plan.
Which Al Khan's directly contradicts.
Right. Yeah. And so, again, we don't have the plan, but that is what the Prime Minister has said about this plan. And so I think that's important.
But Al Khan's has clearly seen it, as has John Healey. And they are the professionals in the Ministry of Defence. Al Khan's has a brilliant service record.
Absolutely.
I mean, who are you going to believe? A Prime Minister with no military experience or the man who's actually been there and done it?
Look, I don't think I wouldn't put it like that myself. And again, so we're still sort of reading between the lines. Al hasn't said he's seen the plan. And I don't know if he has or hasn't.
He says
he has read lines and he feels some of them across, but is that from what he read in John's letter?
I think that was about the Northern Ireland legacy.
I haven't seen his letter in full either. So again, I'm sort of speculating on speculation right now. But I think it is important to say that is what the Prime Minister has said, that the Defence Investment Plan will provide the resources our military needs to keep us safe and the clarity British industry needs to plan.
Right. Let's go to a WhatsApp question from Sam in Surrey. With our terror level at severe and with our defence not being funded correctly, why are the borders not being tightened a lot more? Surely the government should be doing a lot more about illegal immigration so they actually know who's coming into the country. Well, I guess, Pauline, this is a question you wrestled with as Security Minister. How do you answer Sam?
Well, the issue, of course, that he's referring to is the complication that the single travel area with the UK and Ireland, produces when it comes to the border between the north and south. That isn't a border we can close. I mean, there is, I think, a gap in our system, which, for all sorts of political and now legal obligations, we simply can't do anything about. What you have to have, clearly, is cooperation between the two governments about the behaviour of individuals. And that's the only thing I think that one can look to, is that the police forces and the Garda Síochána and the PSNI and also the governments themselves cooperate closely on the whole question of who is coming into both countries. That's the best you can do, I think, there. I mean, this is
sometimes politicians, I mean, you've just done it, but sometimes politicians actually have to say there are some problems that we cannot solve, and this is one of them.
I think we can't. We can mitigate it. We can reduce it. We can't actually stop it completely. No, I think that is the case. Do we need to be tough and determined about immigration and about sending people back who don't have a right to be in the country? Absolutely. And it's very manpower intensive. It's expensive. The question I think I asked myself is there are flows in these things. I have a feeling that actually the immigration flow is declining already. And I think it'll go on declining. To some extent, I think life will solve the issue. And I think it's a very, very tough, irrespective of the colour of government.
Okay, sorry.
I mean, the question seems pretty broad about just illegal migrants arriving by boat, illegal migrants arriving however, and us seemingly not be knowing where, or caring or wanting to vet them properly. I mean, so I think it's not just, it can't just be the Irish border. It's about this much longer running problem that we have.
The suspect here that we're talking about, and we have to be careful because of contempt of court, but the person who has been charged went through the system and was granted asylum.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, then we get to the thornier cultural questions, potentially, and then you get into dangerous territory where you start suggesting that people from, originally from Britain and whatever you want to interpret that are kind of free of committing crimes, and of course that's not true either. So you can't preempt every bad actor, but you can do a lot more in all of our. This is an island; it's a disaster, and so this is the defining issue of the next election and the whole shift in power in this country.
Claire?
Look, and actually that's a very fair point that's been made around the decline of net migration. It's come down now 82% since the peak under the Conservatives in 2023.
That's legal migration.
That's legal migration.
And of good
net migration
that we want to work. So that's the problem.
So, well, it depends. And it's really important that we do build the skills and opportunities for people here already too. I think that's really important. I met some actual social workers from my constituency yesterday in Parliament who actually feel that sector and the work they're doing is being undercut by some of these practices that have been going on for too long. And so I think it's right and good as well that as a government we've brought in within our Employment Rights Act that provision to make sure we can look at a fair pay deal and progression as well for people in the care sector because they do such an important job too. So that is happening. We've also been able to get the asylum backlog down by 50% in a year. That's quite an achievement as well. When it comes to things like asylum hotels, we've closed 11 in the last month. So there is good progress on some of this as well. But, it takes time for people to be able to see that and feel that. But this is progress the government is making.
Steve?
Well, I want to talk about legal migration here. My wife has a serious illness, which is she's just been diagnosed. We went along to Guy's Hospital, where she got great care. We looked at the consultants and the nurses on the board. There wasn't one of them that wasn't from another country who's come here to serve us. If you wiped all the names of foreign people, Islamic people off that board, there would be no one there to serve.
I had a caller last night, I shall remember this call for a long time, Mike in Manchester, who wants to deport everybody, including the people that you're talking about. Because I put to him exactly the same argument that you've put when I was in St Thomas's Hospital. Again, every single nurse, and in my local hospital in Kent as well, every single nurse came from somewhere
Okay, but
overseas.
This caller is talking about terror specifically. We're not talking about good migration from anywhere, which any migrant can be.
But unfortunately, Zoe, there are some people who believe that all migration is bad migration.
Well, that's silly and wrong and bad.
And
but this is a very real question. No, but this is you can't making that argument then get around or downgrade or patronize this concern about terror and the threat that comes from Islamism specifically, that is linked to people who are migrating in various ways. Not all, not predetermined, but it's an issue. And to sort of say, well, it's either you appreciate all the wonderful, melting pot of doctors and nurses, which is wonderful. That's the classic example of it works for them, they're having a better life, and it's invaluable for us. But to then say, or you're obsessed with, the concern about terror is just racism in disguise. That's where all of our problems come from.
Yeah, and then it goes wrong
because of the need, however, to be tough about illegal migration. Certain things have gone wrong with legal migration, certain policy aspects, where we are tight and punitive about the terms in which people can come as students to this country and as experts to this country, making it so expensive for both the individual and the employer that actually it discourages people whom we need. So that is also part of the mix that we face at the moment.
And also the reaction whenever there is a terrible incident like Southampton, like Belfast, where some people decide that the alleged perpetrator comes from a certain background religion or whatever. So therefore, all people who come from that background are potential suspects. And if we really want to go down that road, we're in for a very, very hard time as a country.
The violent thuggery that we've seen in Belfast is absolutely appalling. The only person responsible for that heinous attack on Stephen Ogilvie is the perpetrator, and quite right that they have been taken into custody and that there is a live police case now into this. But what we saw with people's homes being set on fire, with people being approached and challenged because of the colour of their skin, is vile and has no place in our society.
And last night, Muslim care workers unable to go to work. I heard that in a report earlier today. People afraid to go out of their homes because of the colour of their skin or their religion. So, I have Oasis employs many, many Muslim people, Sikh people, people from around the world. They're wonderful, wonderful servants who get up and do hard jobs that others won't do very often. So we got to be very careful, as you say, Iain, once we say it's this group of people that are breaking down our British culture. Actually, it's these people that are sometimes keeping us alive, besides anything.
We mustn't go down the community's route. We must treat people as individuals.
Right. Let's move on because we have some more questions to come. It's 8:48.
On the latest episode of The Newsagents.
Another devastating, perhaps fatal blow to Keir Starmer's authority. As the normally reliable, dependable Defence Secretary, John Healey says, "I've had enough," and quits, and accuses the Prime Minister of not doing what is necessary to keep the country safe.
Get the latest episode of The Newsagents with Emily Maitlis, John Sopel and Lewis Goodall. Listen or watch on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Lotto from the National Lottery now gives you 2 chances to win with every ticket.
Fact, I'm working on a project, several projects around that just now. I think Oasis, actually, we do run schools, but we're really a local community development agency. We work in communities across this country and in other countries to bring people together. But I'm working on a project at the moment with a whole host of people for this Christmas to bring people together across their divides to share menus and to enjoy Christmas meals together. We call it We Are United because food unites people. So Jamie Oliver's getting some recipes ready. There's a ton of people involved.
I hope they all involve turkey.
Don't forget the vegans.
You're obviously
I do forget. I do quite frequently forget the vegans among us.
But the point is this: instead of trying to fight the hard right and say, and bemoan what's happening, what we need to do is bring people together, isn't it? We all discover that when we reach out and we meet someone from a different race, a different religion, a different community that for some reason we've been fearful of or we've despised, we go, hey, he's a really nice guy.
Yeah,
I like him.
And it's also...
And food has always brought people together.
It's interesting you're doing this at Christmas because we are told in various newspapers that, of course, some council areas won't allow Christmas celebrations because it might offend other religions. I have never met a Muslim who doesn't like celebrating Christmas.
No, and I've genuinely have Muslim friends. You know, they're my friends. We go to their houses, have meals. They come to our house. They go, they celebrate Christmas. Yeah. Sikhs celebrate Christmas. I've got a friend who's a leading Sikh, and he says he loves Christmas morning round the Christmas tree with his girls. It's the best day of the year. I've got Muslim friends who send me Christmas cards and send one along. It's a cultural event, Christmas, isn't it? We love it. For 2 weeks in the lead up to Christmas, everyone forgets all this stuff we've been talking about, and peace, love, goodwill, etc. reign. It's always smashed by Boxing Day, by the way. But
Corey's just said in my ear, can you go around the panel quickly, because then we can squeeze in circumcision. You're not going to switch off now, are you? Claire?
Yeah, I agree with what Steve said. And your project sounds fantastic. I'd love to keep hearing more about that as you progress it, Steve, if you don't mind.
We're just going to launch it in a few weeks' time.
That's great. But I also think as well, I always say that society, it's a jigsaw, and we all play our role, and we all have a part in this. And I think my role as a representative, as a member of Parliament, is to use my platform to convene, to bring people together. And I said long before the election I wanted to do politics differently and break down those barriers I think are often needlessly too high between politicians and the people who we're here to represent. And so what I do, as some examples of that, is I run a monthly Coffee with Claire session open to everybody across my community, and I do them on different themes. I move them around the different towns and villages in my constituency, and everybody comes away from that and they say, lots of people do, that they found the discussion interesting, but also the conversations and what they learned from one another. I run politics sessions as well. They're without a theme, but it's just getting people together who would not ordinarily meet, who are interested in politics or our community or whatever it may be, to discuss what actually does unite us. And I think there's a lot more we can do like that.
Sorry?
I would just advise actually meeting your neighbour and looking at them as an individual, not as an identity group, and taking an interest in them. And that would be a good way to meet and then love thy neighbour.
Street parties. I think particularly if you live in some place like London, they're a really good idea.
Woody at the back of the gallery there is cheering you on, Pauline. You've got an ally there, and Corey. So, right, let's go
By the way, I should say, the other year, I organised a community iftar. And we closed off a street quite near to here, just the other side of the river. I organised it and invited the Muslim community in, who came. 650 people came.
Wow.
From, So anyone can be a community organiser, and it starts, as Zoe says, by popping next door to your neighbour and having a cup of tea.
Right, Oliver is in Slough. Oliver, go ahead, please. Hi.
Evening, Ian. I was happy to read today that the Green Party are reviewing their policy on medically unnecessary infant circumcision. I'd love to hear the panel's thoughts on this and whether they think this should be allowed to happen to children without their consent.
Right. Who would like to start on this one? Zoe?
Well, I am the Jewish member of the panel, and
actually, I hadn't.
I'm a woman, so. But no, I mean, this is a very sensitive and deeply important part of the Jewish faith, and I think it's a part of the Muslim faith as well, circumcision. So this is not, in my view, a kind of quick, glib response issue. I think it should be a matter of personal. It has to. I think let us not conflate male circumcision with female circumcision. That's one of the worst things you can do. Well, I mean, if you have to ask that question, that's a concern.
It's mutilating a genital, isn't it?
One of them is the genitals are quite different from each other, and we know that the impact on one is life.
No, you are right,
but can be minor if nothing. Although people who've had it can disagree about that, but it's a very, very significant part of both faiths, certainly of Judaism. At a time when Jews feel completely under attack, especially by the Green Party, this has struck many of us as being kind of just another level.
Oh, so you think that's the motivation for this?
It's connected in the way the Green Party is positioning itself. It feels connected.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pauline?
I don't know what their policy is, but my view is mind your own business.
Yeah.
I think absolutely nothing to do with political parties.
I would have thought there were more important issues to be talking about than this. I really would.
Okay, well, let me play devil's advocate here. Is it right to do this to, like, literally a child shortly after birth? I mean, surely the child should have the opportunity, when it gets to an adult age to decide itself whether it wishes to be circumcised or not.
It's a good discussion to have, but I have good Jewish male friends that I'm working with on our Christmas project, actually. None of them no one in my whole life has ever complained to me about the fact that they were circumcised as a male. Women campaign against this terrible thing that happens to them and the way it does, to use your word, mutilate them. Yeah. It doesn't mutilate men, but it mutilates women.
Absolutely. Yeah.
This has not been a party political issue ever before, and to the points made by Zoe and others, I think it's an interesting priority for the Green Party in this moment we find ourselves in. Today we're talking about defence, and they've decided to announce this policy. I find that a very, as I say, interesting and unusual decision. I think it comes down to personal choice, in my view, and I think there are some areas in which we, of course, need to listen, as Steve said, to what people are saying and also what they're not saying, and respect individual choice and religions. And I have some concerns about why they're raising this in the way that they are.
I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I hadn't clocked that at all. I just thought this was a policy. Well, that sounds perfectly sensible, but I absolutely hadn't clocked what you were saying
for women, there. Ian, sometimes because of the work we do with Muslim and Jewish communities, sometimes for a woman, a young girl who's been mutilated, her genitals have been mutilated, it becomes a real mental health issue. I've never come across that in a male, ever.
Right, let's go to our fun question. Awkward gear change. Steven Spielberg has revealed that he twice asked to direct a James Bond film, but was turned down. Which job did you really want to do at some point in your life, but never got the chance? Pauline.
Well, I've had romantic notions of being a farmer, which could be hardly more different from what I've actually done. But it had to do with being deeply in love with the Yorkshire Dales, which is the part of the world that I grew up in, and thinking that it would be wonderful actually to spend one's daily life here. So it's a dream world.
Sorry.
Probably something in the kind of luxury chocolate or cake making domain. I'd always love to spend my days in a kitchen producing sweet goods. And actually, sometimes I think, well, if all else fails, I will go in that direction.
Why not? Claire?
But there's always time, Ian, I think, for whatever other chapters we may want to have in life. For me, travel photographer. I think there'd be something wonderful about going around this brilliant world of ours, seeing it in greater depth and colour and spending time really immersed in it. So, yes, maybe one day.
Steve?
And for me, bless her, my wonderful mother took me to piano lessons every Wednesday afternoon at 4:00 after school for 3 years. I never practiced. It was terrible. It all ended badly when my piano teacher just burst into tears one day, honestly, and ran out the room, and I never went again. But now I wish I could play the piano. I'd love to be a pianist, a concert pianist. I'd love playing a band.
I shared a flat with a pianist who did West End musicals and operas, and he taught me to play SOS by ABBA, the I don't think I could do it now, but at my school, only girls could play the piano. And this is a comprehensive school. It wasn't a private school. But I would like to be a detective looking for missing people. I think that would be fascinating.
Your own TV.
I don't know if you've ever seen have you ever seen the programme Without a Trace, where it's all a drama, but absolutely fascinating.
I thought you were going to say you'd like to be the new West Ham manager.
No, I'd like to be the new West Ham owner. But if you've got a few pence to spare, Steve. Right, thank you all very much indeed. On Monday's panel, Simon Marks will be here from Monday for the following 2 weeks. He'll be chairing Cross Question. He will have on his panel former Green Party leader Baroness Natalie Bennett, plus the reporter for Politics Home website Tom Scottson. There will be 2 others, but we don't know who they will be quite yet. Now, coming up in the next hour, they've got everything they campaign for, says Nigel Farage, as he defends reform axing pride events in various areas around the country. He said he has no objection to reform-led councils scrapping pride events and that gay and trans voters have got everything they campaign for. Well, on the surface, he's probably got a point about that, But is that really true? Is life in this country absolutely idyllic for the LGBT community? You hear terrible reports of people being attacked in the streets, of homophobic bullying. But do you think taxpayers' money should be used to promote pride events?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, Al Khan's has resigned as Armed Forces Minister just hours after John Healey resigned as Defence Secretary. He said the Prime Minister's defence spending plan isn't enough.
When I saw it, I wasn't happy with the level of transformation within it. So I think there's much more work to be done. But then when you match that with the funding settlement, it isn't enough. I think what we need to do with the funding settlement is find innovative ways of finding the right amount of resource to give the kit and equipment to the armed forces.
Earlier, John Healey accused Sir Keir Starmer of failing to keep the country safe by not spending enough on the armed forces. But speaking to LBC, Labour MP Claire Hazelgrove denied the government's falling apart.
Al has been a fantastic minister and I greatly respect him, but we do need to make sure that we are delivering this defence investment plan. We do need people to be making sure that that's happening within our Ministry of Defence and working collaboratively across government, with the Prime Minister, with the Chancellor, with other departments as needed.
Donald Trump says he's cancelled a planned strike on Iran tonight. The US president says it's because peace talks have been brought to the highest level of the leadership in Iran and approved. He says a deal will be signed soon. Counter-terror police are now leading an investigation into a stabbing at a high school in Manchester on Tuesday. A 14-year-old girl who'd been arrested and detained under the Mental Health Act has now been released to police custody. LBC's North West correspondent Chris Chambers has the latest.
The 14-year-old girl was initially arrested on suspicion of assault and detained under the Mental Health Act, but after an assessment by health professionals, she's been released to police custody, and we've had this statement saying that counter-terrorism police are now leading the investigation. They say further information has come to light, but at the moment it's not been declared as a terrorist incident.
The man who lost an eye in Monday's knife attack in Belfast is said to be improving. DUP leader Gavin Robinson's met Stephen Ogilvy's family and say they've been told he could be brought out of a coma within the next 48 hours. And the drug used in weight loss jabs is going to be available privately in the UK in pill form. The GLP-1 tablet's been approved by the medicines regulator. In the city, the FTSE 100's closed up 49 points at 10,303. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.16. LBC weather, outbreaks of rain continuing tonight, drier later in the night, a low of 9 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
6 minutes past 9 on LBC. Well, 9 hours after John Healey resigned as Defence Secretary, we have a new Defence Secretary. His name is Dan Jarvis, formerly the Security Minister at the Home Office, served in the British Army, has a stellar military career. So that's quite interesting. We'll get some reaction on that a little bit later in the hour. But I want to talk about something that's been made a bit of a splash in the press today. Nigel Farage has said that he has no objection to reform-led councils scrapping pride events and that gay and trans voters have, quotes, got everything they campaigned for. 32 days after romping to victory in the local elections, the new Reform Council in St Helens on Merseyside has announced it is no longer going to support the annual Pride Festival and that it was pulling all funding for Refugees Week events in the area. The Reform UK leader was quizzed by LBC reporter Liam Gotting about this at a press conference in Makerfield on Wednesday. Let's just listen to what he had to say.
I think you'll find that reform-led councils are not flying political symbols on their roofs. They're flying national flags on their roofs, not things to do with political campaigns. And now, as you may know, Reform is comfortably at the top of the opinion polls with male, gay and trans voters. It is. And most of those that I've spoken to don't think there's any need for Pride Month whatsoever. They've got equal treatment, they've got equal rights, they've got everything they campaigned for decades, and many of them simply can't see the point. So I have no objection.
Now, you might not be surprised to know that the leader of the Green Party, Zach Polanski, has disagreed with that.
I'm really proud to be the first out LGBT leader of a party in England and Wales. And I know it means a lot to people. It's also 2026, and we know that hate crimes are on the rise. In fact, people are still brutally attacked in the streets if their partner happens to be of the same sex, and they're still holding hands. And that's why Pride is still so important. It's a chance to be visible, it's a chance to be normalised, and it's a chance to celebrate. So when we see Nigel Farage and Reform trying to stop people celebrating or normalising their identity, it does have real world consequences. And it's so important that all of us, whether we're in these communities or we're allies, speak out against it. This is the thing. We will still be proud, we will still turn up, and we will still celebrate.
If you are part of the so-called LGBT community, I'm never quite sure exactly what that word community means in that context, but if you are gay, lesbian, bisexual or transgender, what's your view on this? Because I don't think there is a uniform view across those groups as to the whole concept of Pride. We all understand why it happened in the first place. Many people really enjoy going to Pride events. I have to say I've never been to one, but I know a lot of my friends have been, and it's a great celebration. There's no harm in it. But what about Nigel Farage's comment about, well, the LGBT community have got everything they campaigned for? Well, if we think back to, say, 25 years ago, civil partnerships were not allowed at that time. They came in, I think, in 2005. Equal marriage came in 2014. Then you had gay adoption coming in as well. So there've been massive strides over a comparatively short period. And all major political parties, their official position has been to support all of those things, or it certainly is now. And I don't think there's any appetite among any party, and I include Reform in this, to reverse any pro-LGBT legislation. But there are still problems for gay people, aren't there? Because I get on my Instagram reels every day examples of particularly gay men who have been beaten up in the street or verbally attacked in the street because of their sexuality. And I think there is a lot more of that going on now than there was a few years ago. We can discuss about why that might be. But I think it's wrong to say that the LGBT community have got everything that they want. And what do you think about your local council flying pride flags above their council properties during Pride Month? Now, I can't see any harm in that, but nor do I think that, I mean, if it is just done to virtue signal, well, that's not really a good enough reason to do it. Now, Reform councils are only flying either the Union Jack or the England flag, or if they don't control any councils in Scotland or Wales, I don't think. So we're just talking about the Union Jack or England flags. I mean, that's for them to do and to be held accountable by their local populations. So I wonder whether you feel strongly about this, or, I mean, Nigel Farage was asked about it, so he had to give an answer. But is this something that deeply concerns you? 0345 6060 973. I better take a sip of water, I think. Peter Tatchell joins me, human rights campaigner and director of the Peter Tatchell Foundation. Peter, welcome. I mean, the Pride flag, what does it symbolise to you?
Well, Pride, the flag and the festival, it's all about celebrating the LGBT plus community, the fact that we contribute to society along with everyone else. And it's also about giving particularly young LGBT plus people a sense of pride and confidence and affirmation. There are still hundreds of thousands of LGBT plus people in this country who are afraid to be open about their sexuality because they fear rejection by their parents, by their mosque, synagogue, church or temple, by neighbours, by work colleagues. They stay in the closet out of fear of a negative reaction. If you look at big name sports like football, there's not a single openly gay or bisexual footballer in the Premier League, even though we have over 5,000 professional footballers in this country. So by the statistical analogy, roughly about 500 of those should or probably are gay or bisexual. So we have made huge progress, no doubt about that. But Nigel Farage is absolutely wrong to say that the battle's all over. We still have conversion practices in this country, mostly by extreme religious groups that use a combination of psychological browbeating and emotional blackmail, plus sometimes violent exorcisms to try and turn gay people straight. Now, that is still legal in this country, even though it was promised to be abolished by the Conservative government in 2018 and by Labour in 2024. So there's just a couple of examples of where progress has not been fully completed.
What do you make of the fact that Nigel Farage said it there, that if you take in the opinion polls, Reform are more popular among the gay community than any other party? Now, in a sense, I would say, well, that just reflects society. I mean, if you look at the opinion polls for straight people, it's exactly the same. Why should it be any different for gay people? But I think a lot of people would have sort of pricked their ears up at that and thought, well, I wasn't expecting that.
Well, first of all, that poll was statistically very questionable, the way it was conducted. But let's accept the poll as it was. 25 to 28% of gay and bisexual men, not lesbians, but gay and bisexual men polled, said they would support reform, which is about similar to the national average.
Yeah.
Among lesbians, the support was much, much less.
But would you have expected that poll result? I wouldn't.
Well, look at it this way. Up to 28% said they support reform, but that means that, 78% do not. So quite clearly, the overwhelming majority of LGBT plus people reject reform.
There are many groups in society that think they deserve public funding. Many groups in society don't get any public funding. Is it right for local councils to spend thousands of pounds of council taxpayers' money on pride events when they wouldn't spend that amount of money on events that support other members of the community?
Well, I think they do. I mean, often local councils will have women's festivals. They will support black and ethnic minority festivals like Diwali and so on. They will also, in many cases, have special festivals or events for older members of the community, for low-income families. Councils do lots of different festivals and events, and the purpose of those is to make those often marginalised communities to feel welcome and included, but it's also makes economic sense. Because if LGBT plus people are down and depressed, if they feel downtrodden, if they feel under threat in their local communities, that will have a negative impact on their psychological and emotional health. That will lead to ill health, physical ill health, which will put a strain on the health service. It will also mean they'll be less productive as workers. They'll take more time off sick. So that's bad for their employers and the places where they work. So for all these reasons, I think it's for the small amounts of money that are involved, in most cases just a few £100, maybe £1,000, that's money well spent.
A text here says, no other community has everything they want. Why should gay people believe they should? Which, I mean, is a pretty crass thing to say in many ways. But, I outlined the legislation that's been passed in this country over the past 25 years. I missed out equal age of consent as well there. But what more? What are you campaigning for in this area now? What more do you think should be done to enable LGBT people to live the kind of lives that other ordinary members of society live?
First, let me say, everybody deserves full rights and full respect. White working class, black working class, everybody across the board deserves a fair deal.
Even aristocrats?
Well, a fair crack of the whip. not privilege, but a fair crack of the whip. I mean, my Peter Tatchell Foundation has been lobbying chief constables across the UK to apologise for past witch hunts. These weren't merely enforcing the law. The police would go out of their way to beat up gay people outside gay pubs, arrest same-sex couples for merely giving each other a kiss, things like that. And so far, we've got 22 chief constables to say sorry. Now, that is very, very important. It may seem nothing, but in the communities, the areas where the chief constables have said sorry, it's produced a much greater sense of trust and confidence in the police by LGBT plus people. They're more likely to come forward to report physical and violent assaults, domestic violence, sexual attacks, because they have greater confidence that the police have said, we recognize we made mistakes, we're on your side now. You cannot underestimate that. And on top of that, many of these chief constables have also introduced new policies, like appointing liaison officers to liaise with the LGBT plus community, setting up anti-homophobia hotlines where crimes can be reported. These are really positive things. They're small things, but they have a huge impact.
But is there something nationally that you want government to do, or has the legislative fight been won?
In terms of the law, the law no longer discriminates, which is fantastic. But it's only relatively recent.
I think that's what Nigel Farage probably meant by that, wasn't it?
Yeah, but he's just not aware, because he doesn't have very much of a sensitivity towards the LGBT plus community. He's not aware of these other issues. So if you ask me a question, we need to make conversion practices, the attempt to change someone's sexuality or gender identity, illegal, as it is in many countries. And we know that the medical and psychiatric profession have said that these conversion practices, they are abusive, they're psychologically and emotionally damaging, and above all, they don't work. I know people who've been through them, and they've ended up suffering from severe depression, and in some cases, even had suicidal thoughts. That's how bad these practices are, and there's no excuse for tolerating them. They should be banned.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Peter. Always good to talk to you. We'll come to your calls in a moment. Very interested to hear your views. And if you are a LGBT plus reform voter, give me a call, because I've never met one. 9:20.
This is LBC.
Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. And come on in to Classic FM Calm. LBC's soothing sister station. Find peace in the music with Classic FM Calm. Listen on Global Player or ask your smart speaker to play Classic FM Calm.
In a world full of noise and uncertainty,
And because I'd seen his name, and to me it looked like a Baltic-sounding name, so I assumed that he came from one of the Baltic countries. It's actually an Irish name, a Gaelic name. But if you look at the spelling of it, I think you can forgive me for thinking it might have been a Baltic name. But one or two people have got very area-rated about that on Twitter. So I just thought I'd better make that clear. It wasn't deliberate. I genuinely thought it was a Baltic name. Now, let's return to the news that I brought you at the start of this hour before we come to your calls, that Dan Jarvis has tonight been named the Defence Secretary, replacing John Healey, who resigned at lunchtime. Another of the possible successors to him, Al Khan's, resigned as the Armed Forces Minister just under an hour ago. Well, I thought I'd talk to Aggie Chambray for the last time on my programme for some time because she's going on maternity leave soon, but here she is again because we want to get her interpretation of what this means for Keir Starmer's government. Aggie, Dan Jarvis is a very popular Member of Parliament on all sides of Parliament, so from that point point of view, he'll be seen as somebody who can maybe calm the troubled waters that Keir Starmer is swimming in at the moment.
Yeah, calming them to an extent, Ian, calming them to the extent that Keir Starmer was able to fill this role. And as you say, Dan Jarvis is very much seen as someone who's a safe pair of hands. He's been an MP since 2011. He's a former soldier too, so he's got some credibility there. But ultimately, some Labour figures think that he's being asked to deliver, or maybe asked to deliver, a defence investment plan that the former Defence Secretary and now the former Defence Minister as well have said is underfunded, have talked about it not being fit for purpose, and also used language suggesting that it'll make Britain less safe. So this feels like an impossible job. And we spoke, a couple of hours ago, Ian? And at that time, Al Khans was still in position. Pamela Nash, the defence PPS, was also in position. They have both now gone, so we do have a new Defence Secretary, Dan Jarvis. But each letter excoriating to Al Khans, talking about we're asking our armed forces to operate in a more dangerous world on a budget written for a calmer one. And all this brings up these questions once again of how long can Keir Starmer hold on? I mean, genuine questions tonight with people I've been speaking to, talking about it, feeling like end of days stuff. Of course, we've got that crucial by-election next Thursday, and I don't think anyone thinks that Keir Starmer won't last until then. But this is really, really difficult stuff. But as I say, he has managed to appoint someone to the Defence Secretary brief, even under those extremely difficult circumstances, and even under that extremely difficult criticism of the Defence Investment Plan, of keeping Britain safe. And he's managed to find somebody, Dan Jarvis, who was Security Minister. He's been a minister ever since Keir Starmer got into government. He's seen as very much a safe pair of hands. But really difficult days for the Prime Minister. And I think it's worth reflecting once again, Ian, that earlier today I spoke to the Deputy Prime Minister and I said, will Keir Starmer still be Prime Minister in a month's time? And he said, yes. And I asked whether the government could survive this. And he talked about having full confidence in that proposition. But I think those questions were really prevalent. And I think there are massive question marks about how long this can go on for.
And I suppose it's going to be quite a difficult week now, because we've got the by-election, in exactly a week's time. And nobody can know what the result of that is going to be. I mean, I wouldn't want to put any money on any of the candidates at the moment. But that is, in some ways, the event that is going to determine Keir Starmer's future, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I mean, it's interesting that you say that. And of course, all the candidates are on our website. The figures that I have spoken to in the Labour camp over the last few days are increasingly bullish about their chances.
Even after today.
By-election, even after today. They, I think, are feeling pretty confident. And you know how it works in by-elections. You don't say things like that unless you are feeling quite confident. But as you say, we cannot know, really can't know. And the last time that constituency went to the polls, which was in the local elections, Reform UK did extremely well. But as you say, that will be the big decider, whether or not Andy Burnham wins that by-election. And then, of course, big question marks over how long that process takes, whether there's a leadership contest, whether there's just a coronation, which many in his camp, I think, would, of course, prefer. But tonight, he has lost a Defence Secretary after days of months, almost a year of haggling over the Defence Investment Plan. He's lost his Armed Forces Minister, again, a respected figure in the Armed Forces community. He's lost the PPS in that department too. And, we're still only weeks away from when he lost his Health Secretary, when he lost a Health Minister, when he lost Jess Phillips, the Safeguarding Minister, when he lost Alex Davies-Jones, another minister. So, this has been a really difficult period for the Prime Minister. And I think lots of people in the Labour Party now just thinking, how long can this really go on for?
Sorry, I was just going to read something that was on my screen and then it disappeared. So let me read a text. Alan says, Andy Burnham will fail in Makerfield and Starmer will survive and take the UK forward despite all the doomsayers. Keir Starmer, actually still has quite, in some ways, a surprising amount of support, doesn't he?
Yes, he does have a surprising amount of support. And there was, straight after the local elections, an extremely difficult week for him. I remember reporting that there were over 100 Labour MPs who basically signed a statement, signed a letter saying that they wanted Keir Starmer to remain in place. He does have that support. Potentially, I would say some of that is now waning, but he also has an awful lot of detractors, especially within the Labour Party. But there are chunks of the public that want him to continue. There are ministers that are still loyal to him, but the problem is they're not all loyal to him, and a lot of them, even people in senior positions, just think really this can't carry on, or they think they're split. And Keir Starmer said over and over again that he will fight any contest. That's been briefed. He said that to ministers again this week. But I think there is a difference between saying that and actually doing it, if indeed Andy Burnham does trigger a leadership contest.
We've just had a statement in from Keir Starmer. Let me read it to you. My first duty is to keep the British people safe, and I will always do what is necessary to protect our national security. Shame John Healey and Al Carnes don't agree with that. He then continues, I'm pleased to appoint Dan Jarvis as Defence Secretary as we strengthen our armed forces and meet the growing threats facing our country. This Labour government is delivering the largest sustained increase in defence spending since the Cold War. In a dangerous and volatile world, we will give our armed forces the capabilities they need to defend Britain and keep our nation secure. I mean, it's as if he's sticking his fingers in his ears and saying, I can't hear you, John Healey. I can't hear you, Al Carnes. I mean, he's taken the public for fools with a statement like that, isn't he?
Well, it's similar to what he said in response to John Healey's letter earlier, isn't it? I mean, I think he wants to stick to his line that they are putting more money into defence. And what else can he say? All he can say really is, I believe that I am doing the right thing. I believe this government is doing the right thing. And John Healey clearly disagrees with him. Al Carnes clearly disagrees with him. Numerous ministers, so many Labour MPs clearly disagree with him. But if he says he's going to fight on, if he says he's going to remain in Downing Street, what else can he do apart from just say that he believes he is doing the right thing? And, it's that phrase that Morgan McSwede was said to have said in a message to Peter Mandelson in those texts where he said, what was it? Charge and retreat, that Keir Starmer charges and retreats. And at the moment, he is charging.
Yeah, charging us a lot, isn't he? Thank you very much, Aggie. That's Aggie Chambray, LBC's Deputy Political Editor. Right. We will come to your calls on Pride in just a moment. It's 9:32 on LBC. Daryl Jackson has the news headlines.
Al Carnes has resigned as Armed Forces Minister just hours after John Healey resigned as Defence Secretary. He's said the Prime Minister's defence spending plan isn't enough. Dan Jarvis has been announced as a new Secretary of State for Defence. Donald Trump's cancelled planned strikes on Iran tonight because he says peace talks are going well. Earlier, the US president threatened to assume total control of Iran's oil and gas industries in the not-too-distant future. And a weight loss pill has been approved for private use in the UK. The Wegovy tablet could become available in weeks for eligible adults. LBC weather, outbreaks of rain continuing tonight. Drier later in the night with some clear spells, a low of 9 degrees.
Weekdays from 7 a.m.
Why do you need consultation? Who's going to say no?
Straight to the point.
Let's see. But why let's see? This is what I don't understand.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Why won't they listen to the most successful living Labour Prime Minister? Arguably the most successful Labour Prime Minister of all time.
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. Download it now from your app store.
Here's a tale of two commuters. Steve was in a rush and needed to
Party, Paul Gould, Independent, Howling Lord Hope, the official monster raving loony party, Rob Kenyon, Reform UK, Robert Pownell, Independent, Rebecca Shepherd, Restore Britain, Sarah Wakefield, Green Party, Peter Ward, Rejoin EU, Bring in PR, Michael Winstanley, the Conservative Party candidate. Is that all? I thought it was more than that. Oh, well, that didn't take too long, did it? Right, let's go back to our discussion, which we don't seem to have made much progress in because of events, about Pride. Because Reform UK are saying that their councils should not fly Pride flags. It's not just Pride flags, any flags, including Ukrainian flags, apart from England or Great Britain flags. Do you agree with that? And do you agree that public money should not be put into Pride events? That's what Nigel Farage believes. I think it's up for each individual council to decide what they do. I can't, as a gay man, I cannot get too excited about not flying a pride flag, but then I can't get too excited if people do fly pride flags. If people want to, absolutely fine. But an interesting text has come in. This is from Kirsten, who says, Reform's Essex Council haven't just cancelled Pride, they have stopped any posters or flags being put up in libraries in Essex. No money is involved at all, just prejudice. Is it prejudice? Should it be? I mean, of course, it shouldn't be prejudice. But when you look at the fact that among gay men in particular, more gay men vote Reform than any other party. I mean, surely Reform have got to understand that their support comes from all parts of society, not just straight white men. 0345 6060 973. Is Pride relevant nowadays? You can understand why it started and how important it was. Or do you think, as Peter Tatchell said, it's a real symbolism for people who maybe are still closeted, that there are lots of gay people out there, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and therefore, if you belong to any one of those groups, you should feel free to be open about it. Adam is a first-time caller in Brighton. Hello, Adam.
Hello, Ian. Thank you for taking my call. This is the first time I've called in, but I watch you live on YouTube and I chat with the team on there every single night.
Do you really?
Show. Yes. But I'm shaking like a leaf, one, because I'm nervous for calling for the first time, but two, because of the words that came out of that Farage's mouth earlier that I heard. I'm furious. All it is, absolutely we should support gay pride and LGBTQ activities. And, you know, growing up as a gay man in the 90s in Brighton was hard enough. Things ain't much better now. Trust me.
Really?
In
what way?
Better in terms of people being attacked on trains. I'm outside of Brighton now, so it's a little more conservative where I am. I'm in Worthing. But anyway, it's just, I don't think it's easy being gay, and I don't think we should be referred to as they 3 times in a row by that lizard man. That's my first point. My second point is flags, right? All these are retrograde steps. The NHS have already stolen our flag, so, you know, you can say it's the NHS or gay pride now if that one's flying. But this is an attack by Farage on the LGBT community. And not only that, it's more of an attack on Zach Balansky as from one leader of a political party to another. That's what I think about that. So, yes, thank you.
I mean, it is now in some schools, probably not all, but certainly I was talking to the daughter of a friend of mine last year about this, and she said that gay kids in her school walk around hand in hand and nobody bats an eyelid. And I'm thinking, well, that couldn't have happened in my day, and I'm sure it still doesn't happen in many schools. But that is progress, isn't it?
Yes, it is progress, and we need to continue with that progress. What's happening now is we're taking steps backwards, and it will only happen in small steps so people don't realise. You know, first of all, it's losing the flag. Second of all, it's losing, you know, money for this and that. Fine. The third step and the fourth step is going to continue, I believe, and that's why I feel like moved to call today, because it's made me quite angry.
What do you make of the fact that so many gay men in particular support reform?
Well, they won't for much longer. If he carries on down this road, they won't for much longer, will they? He's going to completely alienate all of them.
Well, they're certainly not alienated at the moment. It's going to be very interesting to see how that develops. So, as Peter Tatchell said, if you looked further down the figures, I mean, the number of gay women who support reform is fairly insubstantial. Adam, thank you very much indeed. You've made your first-time call. Make sure there's a second-time call as well. Peter says, Tring is celebrating its first Pride Month this year. Tring has a close-knit community of independent businesses and families. Pride is very much needed here for visibility and to help people realise that the LGBT plus residents haven't felt that welcome in the past. With positive events like Tring Pride, it will lift the veil on what it really means to be part of an inclusive community and dispel a lot of the fears and myths that people may have. Tring Pride hasn't been given any taxpayers' money and has raised the money from donations and initiatives. Reform are appealing to people that don't see the importance of inclusivity. Now, that I think is actually quite interesting, because you have Pride events in big cities, obviously London, Brighton, Manchester, Leeds, Birmingham, Norwich. But I haven't heard of Pride events in much smaller places. And I mean, Tring is not, I've been to Tring once. It's not a particularly big place, is it? And I'm thinking, well, I've never been to a Pride event. And I'm thinking, well, if there was one, is there a Tunbridge Wells Pride? I have no idea whether there's a Tunbridge Wells Pride. But if there was, would I go? I might make an effort if it was something local, but I'd have no interest in going to the London one and taking my top off, because that's what it seems to be. You have to have the body beautiful to go to Pride, and really, no one wants to see that, do they? Let's go to Suz in Manchester. Hello, Suz. Are you there? No, let's go to Michael in Chepstow. Hello, Michael.
Hi, and I'm definitely here.
Good, marvellous. What would you like to say to us?
Well, I think there are a couple of things that we need to be mindful of. I agree with your previous caller about progress having been made, and I also agree with Peter Tatchell about government legislation now does put us on an even playing field. But when I think about visibility, I don't necessarily think about myself as a sort of 32-year-old white gay man. I think about the other people that fall under that umbrella, especially our trans brothers and sisters. And I think about the young people who might be coming to terms with their sexuality, and the visibility of the flag is so vital to that.
And do you think taxpayers' money should be spent on Pride events?
Well, I'd be interested to know the figures about the proportion of taxpayers' money.
Well, very small proportions.
Yeah, versus the revenue that would come in. So, for example, this weekend I'll be at Pride Cymru in Cardiff, and I think about the revenue that's going to come in through Cardiff in terms of, hotels and hospitality and leisure, versus the money that Cardiff Council or whoever it might be put in. And, of course, also you've got the donations, you've got people paying at the gate for their tickets. So, really, I think Pride festivals, of course, I'm speaking on a larger scale here with the capital city, but really I think Pride festivals probably bring in more money than they take.
And you live in Chepstow, which, again, it's not a massive town, is it?
No.
I mean, what do you think the reaction would be from the good burghers of Chepstow if there was a Pride event in Chepstow?
Well, I think we do have a Pride festival here for the second time this year. Wow. I know, and it's quite a big thing, and that brings me to my third point, really, which is about the general, like I said, we talked about government legislation and how we have equality in terms of, on paper, the way we live our lives. That's not necessarily reflected in the mentality of individuals. And you can see it in towns, you can see it especially on social media. People still feel that being openly homophobic or transphobic, especially, whatever it might be, is an okay thing. And I think if you can have visibility on a small way in a small town or village, then surely that's the best way to start building the resistance to that mentality.
What do you think governments, councils can do to make gay people feel as equal as they want to feel? Now, Nigel Farage says, well, all of the campaigns have been one that the LGBT community has waged over the years, and to an extent he's right in that. I mean, there's been massive legislative changes. But when I asked Peter Tatchell, well, what more do you want to see happen? He could only come up with things which were I mean, by comparison to equalising the age of consent, introducing adoption for gay people and civil partnerships, I mean, he wasn't really able to articulate any major change that he wanted to see, apart from making people or helping people to feel more comfortable about coming out.
Yeah, I'm not sure that there are major things that the government or councils need to or should do. I think actually it's the small things that make a difference. Seeing your local council flying the flag, which, is a photo opportunity with a couple of councillors and the flag flying. It doesn't cost much, but it's an important gesture. I do think the government, of course, Peter Tatchell mentioned conversion therapy. Also, the government, I think, have a duty to bring awareness about the fact that it's still illegal to be gay in, I think, 64 countries around the world. A dozen of them, it's still punishable by death. I think the government could do more to condemn that openly. That takes you into tricky territory, I know, but that's an important thing too.
Thank you very much indeed for phoning, Michael. Enjoy your weekend in Cardiff. I always love going to Cardiff, one of my favourite cities in the country. Right, let's take a break and we'll come back to more of your calls and also messages. I've got plenty here. 0345 6060 973. What do you make of the fact that 28% of gay men now will vote for reform? And do you think that Nigel Farage has got a point when he says, look, all of the main battles on gay legislation have been won by the LGBT community, so we don't need to fund Pride anymore? I mean, I don't think there's many Pride festivals that now rely on public funding to go ahead. And I would always argue that if you should raise money privately for these events and not rely on the taxpayer. But I don't see any harm if a council wants to support an event or fly a flag. Why even make it an issue? 0345 6060 973. It's 9:47.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Ben Kentish.
As Starmer's Defence Secretary and Armed Forces Minister resign in protest at his leadership, should this be game over for the Prime Minister? Plus, why the Green Party is considering banning circumcision.
Ben Kentish at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Get 100 to 1 on England to lift the trophy when you sign.
I would suggest to you, Ollie, that makes you a bisexual. Lots of nodding going on in the gallery there. No. Anyway, Suze is in Manchester, and hopefully he's here this time. Hello, Suze.
Hi there, Ian. How are you doing? You okay?
I'm doing very well, thank you. What would you like to say? I'm in a slightly holiday demob mood at the moment. So what would you like to tell us?
Yeah, I'll just say I live in Manchester. I'm from a community myself, from the British South Asian community and the Sikh. I treat all people equally. We have a massive Pride Festival in Manchester, as you may know. We have Gay Village in Manchester. But what I find is it's not imposed in any. I don't understand why it needs to be imposed, like have a specific month or a specific. A month against it. Festival, fantastic. I go to the festival myself once a year. Absolutely brilliant. Okay, it's a great day out. Every community has their own festivals. It's absolutely fantastic. Don't see why not. But I don't understand when someone's sexuality, for me, it's a more kind of, maybe I'm more of a conservative, it's more of a private thing. So I don't understand why that would need to be imposed on maybe small villages or footballers being pressured to make themselves and their private business, as it were, to be exposed or to be made public. It's the individual's choice. So I don't understand why it needs to be imposed on the rest of society to say, we're a particular community and it's like this, because I don't see another community that does that. Everybody gets on with it. They have their own events. They have their own
if you're a Muslim,
you has their own issues.
There are lots of religious festivals that are celebrated among communities.
Fantastic, yeah. And there's nothing wrong with the festival.
So why shouldn't gay people have their own one?
No, I'm not saying they shouldn't have a festival. Definitely they should. It happens, like I said, in Manchester, we have the massive Pride Festival here. It's absolutely amazing. Been to it all the time. Nothing wrong with that. But I think when Peter was on, he was mentioning about footballers, mentioning about having a specific month in regards to it. And the other gentleman was saying maybe small villages, it needs to be imposed on them because maybe they.
Well, you keep using this word imposed. Nobody's imposing anything on anyone.
It comes across that way when the gentleman's talking about maybe we should be fighting harder in the smaller conservative like villages and towns and cities where they don't have gay festivals, or they seem to have, maybe it might be perceived as a negative view towards that community. But that's just the way it is. It's life. Lots of communities have people that are negative towards them and have certain issues where one particular area might not be favourable for them, another one will be.
Do you not think that if you have an event like Pride, whether it's in a big city or a smallish town, it enables people to talk to. I mean, there are many people in this country who've never spoken to a gay person. Well, they have, but they just haven't known about it. And it's like they're
thing, is it not? Why do they need to know they're gay? That's what I mean.
Well, hang on. Well, you as a Sikh, do you wear a turban?
Yeah, I do sometimes. Yeah.
So you're visibly telling us what your religion is. And I suspect that there'll be many people who live near you who've never actually had a conversation with a Sikh and don't have any idea what being a Sikh means. But the fact that you wear a turban gives them permission to approach you and ask about your religion. 100%. Now, I don't know how often that happens, if it happens at all, but you're licensing them to do that. Well, at a Pride event, that's what gay and lesbian people are doing as well.
I think gay and lesbian people are part of society, Ian, 100%. And I think it's accepted without a shadow of a doubt from the majority of people. Gay people are in our governments, everywhere in society, performing, in other aspects of entertainment and other aspects of life, doctors maybe, nurses. Nobody has an issue with it, honestly, the majority. It's a minority of people, like with all communities, you'll find there's a minority of people that don't like certain communities, racist towards certain communities. We just get on with it. That's just life. That's just the way it is. But as long as you as an individual, I wouldn't even use the word tolerant, because that means you don't like it.
Yeah, I hate that word. I hate the word I'm not tolerant of the word tolerant.
Yeah, exactly. I don't like that word either. I don't like that word.
I don't want to be tolerated by anybody. It's a whole awful word.
Exactly. For me, everybody's a human being and everybody should be treated equally, no matter what their sexuality preference is. And that's all I'm saying. I don't think when I say impose, I don't mean it in a negative sense that you impose something. I mean, we get on with it. It's life. Yeah. We know the gay people are here, and that's the end of it. The festival's fantastic once a year, absolutely brilliant. I think lots of people realise there's gay people, lesbian people in our society, and they just get on with it. You're just going to get a few idiots now and then, Ian, who are minority idiots who are just going to be there just to create tension and negativity for their own reasons or their own not understanding things. And that's it, I think.
All right, Sus, thank you very much. Max is in Brighton. Hello, Max.
Hi there, Ian. I'm sort of half in Brighton, half in Camden, but I often...
You're a Brighton bisexual.
No, I'm bilocational.
Bilocation.
Not bisexual. No, I'm definitely I'm a sort of mature gay man. And what I was saying to your producer was that, to be honest, I go to the Pride event in Brighton every year, mainly just to watch the parade. And what's fabulous is, and I was saying to your producer, is that the kind of latent homophobia that I have in myself because of my generation, and I think you probably understand perhaps that, it's the first time I really do feel proud to be gay because it's a whole community. And they have a fantastic day. There's the police, there's a Tesco float, there's a fire brigade float, there's everything. And everyone, the children, their parents watching, and everyone has an amazing smile on their face. And I think this wouldn't happen without this event. It's a wonderful day. So that's my point, that it can't do any harm. And if it might not be a protest anymore, in other words, Nigel Farag's comment that there's no need to protest, it's beyond that. It's a wonderful, wonderful, happy day. And people are, having great fun. And also it says that, the gay community is offering something to the wider community by having a wonderful day.
Thank you very much indeed, Max. Let's go to Ian, who is in Ryde on the Isle of Wight. Ian, what would you like to say?
Good evening, Ian. Your comment about reform and why is anyone surprised that 28% of gay men are intending to vote reform? Well, why should they be? Because that's what reform are polling at the moment, is about 28%.
Yes, but if you read any of the gay press, I mean, let's put it this way, reform don't get a very easy ride in the gay press. And so I think if you do that, you would be quite surprised to think that percentage would be as high as that.
Well, Ian, you've got me at a disadvantage because I don't read the gay press. But I'm not proud of being a heterosexual either. I just am a heterosexual.
Yeah,
I don't understand. Are you proud of being gay?
It's not something I've ever really thought about in those terms, because I'm rather like you. I think, well, I am what I am, to quote Gloria Gaynor, and
exactly.
How gay is that? I have no particular desire to change what I am. I know my life would have been easier had I not been what I am. But I have absolutely no regrets. I mean, it's interesting the comment that our previous caller, Max, made about sort of, even though he's gay, is internalised homophobia because of the circumstances in which he was brought up and the generation that he was brought up in. I've never had that sort of feeling, even though, I mean, I wasn't open about my sexuality until I was, my 30s, really. Ian, we've run out of time, I'm afraid, but thank you very much indeed for your call. And thanks for all of your calls and messages this evening and throughout this week. I'm going to be away for the next couple of weeks. Nothing sinister, just some time off. So Simon Marks will be here on Monday evening from 7, and he'll be with you every evening for the next fortnight. If you missed any of this evening's show, you can listen back on our free Global Player app or the LBC app, where you can stay up to date with all the latest news, videos and opinion, and download the official LBC app for free from your app store right now. Well, coming up at 1 on LBC is Clive Bull. But right now, here's Ben Kentish.
Thank you, Ian. Have a lovely and well-deserved break. Hello there. A very, very good evening indeed this Thursday night. Welcome to Late Nights with Ben Kentish. Coming up...
I wasn't happy with the level of transformation within it, so I think there's much more work to be done. But then when you match that with a funding settlement, it isn't enough.
Keir Starmer teeters on the brink again tonight after another devastating day in which both his Defence Secretary and his Armed Forces Minister have resigned, savaging the Prime Minister's leadership, or more to the point as they see it, lack of it. Tonight,